The committee will come to order, and without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recesses of the subcommittee at any time. Welcome to today's hearing entitled The Genesis Mission, Prioritizing American Science and Leadership, Technology Leadership. I'd like to recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's timely hearing entitled The Genesis Mission, Prioritizing American Science and Technology Leadership. I'm eager for this morning's discussion and to learn more about the Genesis mission, as well as the Department of Energy's recent reorganization to reflect the Trump administration's new priorities. On November the 24th, President Trump signed an executive order 14363, launching the Genesis mission, creating a national initiative to build the world's most advanced platform to accelerate scientific innovation and discovery by harnessing the power of artificial intelligence. Led by DOE, in collaboration with the White House Office of Science and Technology, this effort arrives at a pivotal moment. We are in the midst of a computing revolution propelled by AI. That is transforming how that we conduct science. The Genesis mission brings together DOE's 17 national laboratories, America's leading universities, and industry to create a national discovery platform that unites the world's most powerful supercomputers, AI systems, and emerging quantum technologies with the nation's premier scientific instruments, establishing an integrated infrastructure for groundbreaking exploration. By connecting these systems, the Genesis mission will generate new data to train advanced AI models, empowering researchers to tackle the most complex scientific challenges. Its goal is to double the productivity and impact of U.S. research and development by pairing scientists with intelligence systems that can reason, simulate, and experiment at extraordinary speeds. Let me be clear. The Genesis mission will not use AI to replace scientists, but to enhance scientists in their work. It leverages AI for discovery, not automation. It helps researchers explore and understand our universe with greater depth and efficiency than was ever previously possible. Think of the breakthroughs that could be unlocked, from realizing fusion energy to securing critical materials to discovering new quantum computing algorithms and life-saving medicines. The Genesis mission has the potential to expand the realm of possibilities across energy, discovery science, and national security. I look forward to examining how the Genesis mission will reinforce American leadership and how DOE's reorganization positions the department to carry out the administration's priorities. To ensure American leadership in cutting-edge technologies, the Trump administration established 2 new offices at DOE, one focused on AI and quantum, and the other on nuclear fusion. This reflects the department's commitment to advancing critical and emerging technologies that will strengthen America's strategic position. Understanding how these new offices will support the Genesis mission and the administration's broader priorities is essential to today's discussion. We cannot afford to cede scientific leadership in advanced technological sectors to our adversaries, especially the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. This common sense reorganization, in concert with the Genesis mission, recognizes that reality and underscores the strengths of our national labs, universities, and industry in driving exploration and discovery across basic sciences. These types of public-private partnerships are key to ensuring our scientific enterprise plays an integral role in safeguarding our energy, economic, and national security. This committee is committed to working with the department to bolster these partnerships and to promote the shared priorities of both the committee and the administration so that the United States remains at the forefront of innovation. I want to thank you once again, and Undersecretary Gill, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here. And we're looking forward to your testimony today. And with that, I'll yield back the balance of my time. And now I'd like to recognize the ranking member, Ms. Lofgren.
Thank you and good morning. Thank you, Chairman Babin. for holding this hearing today and to Undersecretary Gill for being here. You know, under normal circumstances, I would begin by talking about the exciting activities under your portfolio and how much I look forward to working with you on each of them. That would certainly include my long-standing support for dramatically accelerating the development and commercialization of fusion energy. However, I feel duty-bound to raise my strong objection to the notion of holding this hearing before we hear from Secretary Wright himself. As the Secretary should fully understand by now, this committee has sole jurisdiction in the House of Representatives over the authorization of all of the Department of Energy's non-military science and energy research, development, demonstration, and commercial application programs that he supposedly cares so deeply about. With no disrespect to our friends at the Energy and Commerce Committee, this committee actually far exceeds the annual DOE budgetary authority that they oversee. And yet the Secretary and his team have repeatedly found excuses to avoid testifying before us. Nearly every recent Energy Secretary has made themselves available to testify in front of this committee in the first session of Congress. However, Secretary Wright has decided to run out the clock while taking a series of highly consequential, I would say legally dubious and otherwise objectionable actions in his first 11 months in office that have raised profound concerns among many members on both sides of the aisle. There must be accountability for the slapdash, extremely politicized termination of billions of DOE awards that were previously provided across the country through extremely rigorous, independent, merit-based processes. The mass firings and coerced departures of dedicated experts throughout DOE, the illegal elimination of the Office of Clean Energy demonstrations, insanely inaccurate statements regarding the role that renewables play in ensuring the reliability of our electric grid, the widely debunked climate, quote, science, unquote, report that the Secretary commissioned. I could go on. I'm happy to hear from you, Dr. Gill, today, but Secretary Wright really has a responsibility to respond to our inquiries on each of these matters himself. I want to make clear, however, we may disagree from time to time on policy, Mr. Chairman. My demand and expectation that the Secretary appear before this committee on a regular basis is not partisan. It's an obligation of every Secretary, regardless of administration, and it has always been implied that refusal to engage in this norm could serve as grounds for the committee to issue a subpoena for testimony. Last Congress, when Chairman Lucas was having difficulty confirming a hearing date with Secretary Granholm's team, I called the Secretary directly and personally and made sure that she understood my expectations as well. And I would have supported measures to compel her testimony if it had come to that, but it didn't. The hearing was scheduled shortly thereafter. Unfortunately, this is part of a broad pattern of Congress not being able to fulfill our oversight responsibilities. At this point in time last Congress, the heads of the following agencies had already testified in the Science Committee: the Department of Commerce, the Department of Energy, the EPA, National Science Foundation, U.S. Fire Administration, NASA, NIST, NOAA. We also heard from inspector generals from many of these agencies. This Congress, we haven't heard from a single agency head or a single inspector general. This isn't acceptable, and it provides for a void in our Article I duties to oversee the agencies within our jurisdiction. Mr. Chairman, I know that you wish to do vigorous oversight, as do I, but I have to raise this concern of the stonewall that we received. I look forward to a thoughtful and comprehensive discussion with Dr. Gill this morning, and I hope that together we can reassert and enforce the right of this committee to have the cabinet-level heads of each of these agencies under our jurisdiction appear before our members going forward. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Thank you, and I appreciate exactly what you said. But I will make a clarifying statement there. Secretary Wright was confirmed to testify before this committee on October the 15th. Unfortunately, due to the Senate Democrat government shutdown, that hearing did not come to fruition. And now, with the recent launch of the Genesis mission, this committee found it timely to invite Undersecretary Gill to testify on this historic endeavor. And we look forward to hearing more about this today. We have commitments from the Secretary, from Secretary Wright, that he will be available to testify before this committee early next year. And we look forward to hearing about the good work that the department is doing from him then.
Would the gentleman yield just briefly?
Yes.
He did cancel our September 18th appearance, and my comments were based on that, but I am grateful to hear that he is going to be here appearing before us early next year. I wish that it had been in this first session of Congress. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren. I now recognize the chairman of the Energy Subcommittee for an opening statement, Mr. Weber of Texas.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Bammett, for holding this hearing on such a critical and timely topic. I, too, would also like to thank Secretary Gill for being here. And we actually have, Mr. Chairman, something happened that I haven't seen in 12 years that I've been on this committee. We have a lot of lab directors right here on that floor. Can we give them a hand? So, I like to say that the national lab directors are the spear tip of America's preeminence into the future. Thank you all for what y'all do. In November, the Department of Energy released its reorganization plans outlining the creation, merger, and renaming of several key elements within the department. You know, this is not a unique action, as each administration typically updates DOE structure to align the department with its priorities. The latest reforms streamline DOE's operations, and in my view, represent a step in the right direction toward appropriately distributing the responsibilities of the offices of the undersecretaries for science and energy. Most offices focus on applied energy technology have now been consolidated under the Undersecretary for Energy. Prime example of this is moving the Office of Fossil Energy, now renamed the Hydrocarbons and Geothermal Energy Office, from the Undersecretary for Science to the Undersecretary of Energy. By shifting offices responsible for established and mature technologies from the science portfolio to the energy portfolio, the responsibilities of the two undersecretaries are now far more aligned than under the previous structure put in place by the Biden administration. Subsequently, with this restructuring, the Undersecretary for Science now has a clear mandate from the administration to continue advancing fundamental research while driving cutting-edge innovation in critical and emerging fields vital to America's national economic and energy security. Did I mention that the national labs are the spear tip for American innovation? Did I mention that? Two new offices, the Office of Artificial Intelligence and Quantum and the Office of Fusion, have been established, emphasizing the central role these disciplines will play in keeping American innovation and technology in the lead. Furthermore, their creation also serves as a signal to the world America's renewed commitment to these crucial and rapidly evolving technology sectors. The Undersecretary for Science now has the additional tools to help move trailblazing emerging science from early ideas to commercial applications. With the Office of Science and the Office of Technology Commercialization brought under the same umbrella, the research and development cycle can be accelerated by streamlining all of these efforts under one single roof. This reorganization appears to be a significant win for all parties involved. Researchers and companies now have streamlined, clearly defined offices at DOE to engage with, ensuring taxpayers get the absolute best bang for their buck. It is a rare common sense step, I have to say, by the federal government that delivers broad benefits rather than serving only a select few. And I would be remiss, Mr. Chairman, if I did not mention the Genesis mission announcement and your push to propel America's artificial intelligence R&D. I am looking forward to hearing how the mission will integrate with DOE's newly reorganized structure and, more importantly, how Congress can keep the momentum moving forward on artificial intelligence. You know, Our adversaries have prioritized the very technologies the Genesis mission seeks to advance, like fusion, artificial intelligence, and quantum sciences, and regardless of party, we all want America to win this race and remain at the forefront of these disciplines as they continue to grow and evolve. Thank you, Undersecretary Gill, for attending this hearing today, lab directors as well. I look forward to hearing your perspective, Secretary Gill, on how this reorganization has strengthened the Department of Efficiency and Impact, as well as how it enables DOE to execute the Genesis mission. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Appreciate it. Now I'd like to recognize the ranking member from the Energy Subcommittee for a statement.
Thank you so much, Chairman Babin, for convening today's hearing on the Genesis mission. I also want to thank Dr. Gill for being here this morning as our witness. This initiative, led by the Department of Energy, is a strategic undertaking for the future of our nation's prosperity and security. The Genesis mission has the potential to double American research productivity within a decade by connecting national labs, universities, and industry to develop powerful AI platforms for science. The core objective of the mission is to train scientific foundation models, automate research workflows, and boost research and development productivity. In doing so, America will continue accomplishing breakthroughs in advanced nuclear energy, fusion power, and grid modernization. It also solidifies our quantum ecosystem and fosters discoveries in material science, biotechnology, and physics. The initiative relies heavily on collaboration with academia and the private sector. In a budget-constrained environment, I'm glad to see the Department of Energy prioritizing research infrastructure investments with universities. Universities serve a crucial link in the public-private ecosystem, working alongside national laboratories and private sector innovators. North Carolina State University, in my district, already plays a vital role in this project. NC State is the national leader in advanced materials, energy systems, AI and data science, high-performing computing, and advanced manufacturing, all core pillars of the Genesis mission. In the past 3 years, NC State has been awarded over $40 million in funding for research in AI and machine learning. Of all the universities in North Carolina, and we have many excellent ones, Congresswoman Fushi, NC State does the most research with the Department of Energy. However, it is very important to acknowledge the severity of the Trump administration's federal funding cuts to the Department of Energy and the effects these cuts will have on the Genesis mission. The President's FY26 budget request proposes an overall decrease of $3.5 billion, or 7%, from the FY25 enacted level of funding. These cuts have created conflict between the mission's ambitious goals and the simultaneous termination of freezing billions of dollars of existing energy and research projects. Moreover, firing world-class scientists and pausing programs will hinder American innovation and our leadership in the world. Each dollar cut from DOE gives our adversaries an ability to gain the upper hand. For the United States to carry out the Genesis mission successfully, we need the Department of Energy to be well supported and organized. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. And my colleague from Texas has already announced this, but do we have all 17 here? This is great. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. It's an honor to have you all here. Okay. Our witness today is Dr. Dario Gill. Dr. Gill currently serves as the Undersecretary for Science at the United States Department of Energy. Dr. Gill previously served as Senior Vice President and Director of Research at IBM. Dr. Gill has also served on the President's Council of Science and Technology Advisors, or PCAST, and on the National Science Board as well. So now I'd like to recognize Undersecretary Gill for 5 minutes for your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Chairman Babin, Ranking Member Lofgren, and distinguished members of the committee. I am honored to address you today on a topic of profound importance to our nation's scientific future and global competitiveness: artificial intelligence. My career, including my tenure as the 12th director of IBM Research, has afforded me a front-row seat to the convergence of high-performance computing, AI, and quantum computing. This convergence is not merely an advancement. It is a scientific and technological revolution. These technologies will fundamentally transform the practice of science and engineering. The Department of Energy, with its unique missions, unparalleled expertise, and world-class national laboratories, is uniquely positioned to lead this transformation. Thanks to sustained bipartisan support from this committee and Congress, DOE possesses the capabilities to advance the AI and quantum frontiers and apply the revolutionary potential across all our missions, strengthening the country's prosperity and national security. This aligns with the President's vision for American energy dominance and winning the AI race. The President's recent executive order launching the Genesis mission underscores the foundational work DOE has already accomplished in AI and tasks us with leading an ambitious national effort. This mission will mobilize our 17 national laboratories, industry, and academia to build an integrated discovery platform, the Genesis Science and Security Platform. This platform will unite the world's fastest supercomputers, AI systems, next-generation quantum computers, and exquisite scientific instruments, creating the most complex and powerful scientific instrument ever built. This unparalleled platform will tackle high-impact grand challenges across DOE's broad mission. In energy, we will accelerate advanced nuclear and fusion technologies and modernize power grid using AI for reliable, affordable, and secure energy. In scientific discovery, we will utilize physics-aware AI to accelerate breakthroughs in materials, chemistry, and our understanding of the universe, ensuring America's leadership in fundamental science. And in national security, we will strengthen supply chains, secure critical materials, and accelerate the development of defense-ready materials and advanced manufacturing. This mission, which we envision as our generation's Manhattan or Apollo-scale project, will multiply the return on taxpayer investment and solidify America's global technological and strategic leadership. DOE's approach rests on several critical pillars. We recognize that AI and quantum are not just tools, but foundational elements of new supercomputing platforms. Our exascale machines, Aurora, Frontier, and El Capitan, are already demonstrating AI's potential in scientific workflows. New machines like Doudna, Mission, and Vision will further accelerate AI training and high-performance computing for scientific and national security applications. They will also allow us to push the frontier of AI beyond language and coding and into the realms of science and engineering. AI and quantum computing offer a fundamentally new paradigm for understanding the natural world. They are the new scientific instruments of our time. And just like telescopes and microscopes transform how we see the very large, the very far, and the very small, AI and quantum supercomputers are going to transform how we make sense of the very complex. By designing systems that can learn, adapt, reason, and experiment, not just calculate, we are creating the engines that will drive discoveries for the next century of American innovation. And while I am passionate about our unfolding computing revolution, I'm even more passionate about what our national laboratories and the 40,000 dedicated scientists, engineers, and technical staff will do with it. The national labs are the crown jewels of our innovation ecosystem, the ultimate proving grounds where theory meets the physical world. This is truly a team effort at the department, and I am honored to be joined here by an extraordinary group of leaders, the directors of the 17 national laboratories of the United States. I can tell you that we meet every week and that we're all united in making the Genesis mission a success. The Genesis mission requires forging partnerships to bring the best that academia, industry, philanthropy, and government have to offer. The recently announced AI supercomputing partnerships for Discovery and Solstice, and NNSA's collaboration with frontier AI companies to deploy powerful AI models in classified environments are great examples of the potential. After all, it's worth remembering that the private sector conducts nearly 70% of our nation's trillion-a-year R&D efforts. The Department of Energy, through its national laboratories, is prepared to lead this national mission with a profound sense of urgency. We are in a race against our peer competitors, and we recognize that science, engineering, and technology are the new currency of strategic power. This is a race we must and will win. This work may well define our generation's legacy, and we are committed to deliver for our nation and for our fellow citizens. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Undersecretary Gill, for your testimony. And now we will move on to questions, and the chair will recognize himself for 5 minutes. And so, Dr. Gill, thank you for your testimony. You mentioned the funding that you received in the Working Class Bonus Tax Relief Act. This summer is helping to kickstart Genesis. Can you go into a little more detail on what parts of the platform you're creating for these initial funds?
Yes, first of all, the department is enormously appreciative of the support that Congress has put to advance the Genesis mission. So at the core, we're doing two things. We're building a platform, and we are constructing a portfolio of scientific and engineering challenges for energy, national security, and discovery science. That funding, which actually today we're going to be announcing the first $320 million of programs for the American Science Cloud and for the Transformational Model Consortia, is going to allow us to disperse funds across different national laboratories and in partnership also with universities and other stakeholders to start curating data sets that are based on scientific and engineering efforts that the laboratories have conducted over decades, and be able to allow us to encode the information and the results of those data sets in a new generation of AI models. And it also is allowing us to start building the core infrastructure for both computing and collaboration across the stakeholders to make it happen. So we are delighted that funding was allocated, and we are already executing it.
Yes, sir, thank you. You also mentioned the importance that quantum is going to play in making these scientific leaps forward. How vital is it that Congress, and more specifically this very committee, SST, works to reauthorize the National Quantum Initiative Act?
First thing I'll say is I devoted a good part of my life to quantum computing, so I love that field. I'll just say it up front. I remember coming here when the first National Quantum Initiative was being discussed, and we brought at the time a quantum chandelier to have discussions with members. So I've been a big fan of the National Quantum Initiative. A few weeks ago, actually, we announced the renewal of the center, $625 million for renewal, and I'm very supportive and enthusiastic to reauthorize in the National Quantum Initiative. I would say one thing is that while I am incredibly supportive of continuing to advance quantum information science, we're in the fortunate position that now we can also build quantum computers and realize the dream of this field. So what I would also hope is we get a chance to do both, support quantum information science and deliver a capability.
Yes, sir. And I want to follow that up with how do you envision the department's existing efforts on quantum working with Genesis Mission's proposed actions?
Yeah, great question. So the platform at its heart has to bring three things together: supercomputing, which the department is justly well-renowned for, AI supercomputers, and quantum supercomputers. This latter category obviously is less mature than the other ones, but we view the Genesis mission as an opportunity to deliver quantum supercomputers and to connect them with AI and high-performance computing.
Excellent. And I still have a little time, so Mr. Undersecretary, Americans were crushed by the inflation, which was really basically caused by massive spending during the Biden administration on green technology subsidies and special interest mandates that raised electricity bills and prices at the pump. How did the Working Class Bonus Tax Relief Act elimination of that burden drive down costs to the consumer? How did that operate?
So look, the more we offer common sense approaches of how we produce energy and the regulatory burden that we impose in our private sector and the broader ecosystem, and simplify that so we allow both consumer choice and then also, like I said, common sense approaches on how we build products and the energy that is going to power them, the better results we're going to deliver for the American citizens, including lowering costs. So that's the priority of the department, is just to implement those approaches.
Affordability is a very, very big issue. It certainly is. Okay, well, I'll yield the balance of my time and recognize Ranking Member of the full committee for her questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and Dr. Gill, thank you for being here. I remember very well the hearing where you were an expert witness and on the quantum computing issue, and certainly I can't think of too many other times when a subject matter expert witness ended up being an undersecretary in charge of those subjects. So I think we're lucky, America's lucky, that you've agreed to take this position, and I look forward to working with you. You are very well schooled in quantum and in AI. I want to talk about the Fusion program. You recently spoke at the launch event for a report from the Special Competitive Studies Project on accelerating the commercialization of fusion. As you know, that report included a detailed analysis that found that China has invested at least $6.5 billion in fusion development since 2023, about 3 times the total funds that DOE's Fusion Energy Science Program has spent over the same time period. And the authors noted that largely because of the lack of transparency in China, that's a conservative estimate. It could be as much as $10 to $13 billion. Our scientists did a fusion roadmap. China funded it, we didn't. In response to these findings, the SCSP has recommended that the United States make a one-time $10 billion investment in fusion research and commercial demonstration efforts to ensure that the U.S. wins the commercial fusion race, and that mirrors the recommendation from the Fusion Industry Association. Now, we are all concerned about our budget deficit, but I would note during the shutdown, the Trump administration found a way to provide $20 billion to Argentina, and we've just heard the announcement of $12 billion to soybean farmers. So to put this request in perspective, the $10 billion on fusion will probably pay bigger dividends for our country than those 2 expenditures. Without commenting on the Argentina and soybean expenditures, do you agree with the recommendation, the $10 billion shot in the arm to catch up to China?
So, Ranking Member, it's great to be here and to see you again. I also remember fondly our discussions when I was in the National Science Board, so thank you for your support in those efforts. So first of all, let me just say that fusion is an absolute top priority for Secretary Wright and for myself. I've been consistent that in addition to stewarding and providing good leadership on the broad mandate on the Office of Science that we do, priorities are AI, quantum, and fusion. And within that, we released a roadmap about a month ago or so that lays out the infrastructure investments that we need to make as a department to complement the $9 billion of venture capital that has been invested into fusion energy. I think that that's a very exciting development.
That's your $1 billion a year proposal?
Yeah, that is correct. So that effort is, and we're doing, I was actually the last couple of days with the leader of the fusion industry, and what we're doing, just so you know, the plan that we have ahead is we laid out the roadmap of the department. We're in the process right now of working collaboratively with all the stakeholders, meaning private sector and academia, to lay out an integrated roadmap of all the things we need to do as a country to deliver fusion power plants in the early 2030s.
Can I ask about the, I've heard that there are proposals to reallocate funds from the bipartisan infrastructure law towards fusion. And I don't think that's going to work. Those funds have been appropriated. You can't impound the funds. If you try and do it, there'll be lawsuits and you're going to lose the lawsuit. And so I'm looking for, I mean, we've got, and I'm glad you're working with private sector. I'm not critical of that. But we're looking for an infusion of federal research funds so that we can win this fight. And the recommendation being made by the scientists, really, the $10 billion infusion is, and it's agreed to by private sector as well as the scientists, could make the difference. We are at a critical point in fusion, and we've seen a huge amount of funds from the private sector, venture capital and the like, and that is wonderful. But there are some things that they can't do. There's some research that we need to do that will benefit the entire industry, and that is what this shot in the arm is intended to do. So I see, actually, my time has expired, but I'm looking forward to working with you, Dr. Gill, because I think when you look at the entire budget, and you know, I don't know why Argentina needs $20 million, but certainly the fusion industry does. So with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Now I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Fleischman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your holding this hearing. Undersecretary Gill, thank you for your wonderful visit this morning. I think that was probably one of the best presentations, very concise, articulate. And to our national lab directors, our national labs are our national treasures. In my role as Chairman of Energy and Water, Chair for Appropriations, it's a privilege to fund you all every year, and thank you. I'm especially pleased that we can have 17, all of our national labs, participate in this endeavor. I think that's truly outstanding. Mr. Secretary, this is really an incredible opportunity, and you can hear sometimes some of the political bantering back and forth, but the reality is that this great administration and you all are committed to doing something that we rarely get an opportunity to do. That's to take supercomputing, which I've championed for years at Oak Ridge National Lab and around the country, AI computing and quantum computing, and bringing them together. So whether it's something that the ranking member might favor in the way of fusion, or you were discussing protein research and the like, pick the topic. This is the opportunity to solve the problems across the spectrum, and I think that can't be lost today. We have an unprecedented opportunity right now with this endeavor, so I thank you so much. With my appropriator's hat on, we will need your help in terms of figuring out where to put those key dollars. We did that with supercomputing. I can remember when we were at petaflops level, meeting in Oak Ridge, and we worked with the other national labs, and guess what? We got to exascale, and we're going to get to beyond. But these other two aspects are that. Perhaps most importantly, I do want to say that we are going to bring together academia, we're going to bring together industry, we're going to bring together philanthropy, and we're going to bring together government. You and I had this decision. We can all work together in a bipartisan, bicameral fashion to get this done for America. Because if we don't, our competition is going to get there. And I believe in American excellence. I know everyone, including yourself, and the wonderful men and women behind you have the same thoughts. So in that regard, thank you, and I'm with you. A few quick questions. What are the early milestones or successes that DOE is tracking for the Genesis mission?
First of all, Congressman, I want to just thank you for your leadership supporting not only Oak Ridge, but the national laboratories and your passion for them. It makes a world of a difference. The first milestones we have is we're very focused and we're already working on making extraordinary progress on the platform build. That means ensuring that we secure access to high-performance computing and AI supercomputing capacity, that we build the best of the AI models that our country has to offer and bring them into the realm of science and engineering. We are already, in very short, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, that we've been working on this in earnest. There's a dedicated team. By the way, we operate with scientists and engineers across the different laboratories, working together, building every day together these platforms. So that is the first thing. It's a demonstration of workflow. And just to give you an example, we have workflows already that allows a scientist to trigger a question. The workflow automatically provisions time on a supercomputer, waits for the results, analyzes the results. Once it does that, triggers an experiment. The experiment gets conducted, it gets analyzed, and the feedback continues. This aspect of these workflows enabled by AI literally was like science fiction. I've been a computer scientist a long time in my life, and it was just impossible that we could do this. So that's first step, platform build that allows us an environment to collaborate.
Well, thank you. In my waning seconds, I do want to invite everyone at 4 o'clock today, my distinguished colleague from Illinois, Mr. Foster, and I, we are the co-chairs. I'm the Republican, he's the Democrat of the of the National Labs Caucus. We will be with all of our National Labs Director, and Mr. Chairman, this too will be the topic du jour. So thank you for the hearing. Thank you for participation. Again, an unprecedented opportunity for us in government to work with academia, philanthropy, and of course, industry, critically important to get it done for America. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize the gentlewoman from Oregon, Ms. Bonamici.
Thank you very much, Chair Babin, Ranking Member Lofgren, Dr. Gill. Welcome back to the committee, and welcome to the National Lab Directors who are here today. We certainly appreciate your work. The department's Genesis mission outlines an ambitious vision for American science and energy leadership, and it's a laudable vision, especially the potential to lower costs for families, expand supply, and strengthen an already strained grid. But the department's recent actions are inconsistent with that vision. As Ranking Member Lofgren added, in October, the department wrongfully terminated more than 220 projects, including, for example, energy efficiency, workforce, and grid modernization work. Some of that by the New Buildings Institute and Portland General Electric. These are projects that support reliability and affordability, not just in Oregon, but in the entire region. And the department's budget request also proposes gutting or cutting the Office for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Grid integration and building programs are designed to reduce home energy bills and strengthen infrastructure. And these cancellations and cuts, they don't align with the stated goals of the Genesis mission. And if it is not at all clear, how or even if the DOE plans to promote, not undermine, reliable and affordable renewable energy. The department canceled somewhere between $7.5 to $8 billion in grid infrastructure, efficiency, community energy, and workforce programs and projects, yet it describes the Genesis mission as designed to improve reliability and competitiveness. So, Dr. Gill, how does the DOE reconcile these cancellations with the mission's stated objectives?
Thank you for the question. The department is indeed engaged through a project review program around that. I have to tell you, I have not been involved in any aspect of that program, so I cannot give you any details.
I would have asked the secretary directly, but he's not here.
I understand. So I know that there's been, public commentary in the secretary of the process of technical review and economic merit and alignment with priorities. What I can comment is on the part that I am involved, is that in all of those areas, as was alluded to before, the Genesis mission, by building a platform, is going to allow us to give a foundation with which to pursue any and all of those policy priorities. So what I can tell you is what I am involved in is in building the infrastructure and the platform and the construction of a portfolio of programs, including in energy, in all of those areas, that is going to accelerate our ability to impact that.
Thank you.
So-
I appreciate that very much. But as the Undersecretary, I hope you can take a message to the Secretary and to the Department. They told the awardees that their projects were terminated because they, quote, no longer effectuate program goals and agency priorities. So I'm asking if we can get analysis of how the department made these how did they justify the project cancellations, and how the determinations were made. So can you commit to providing the committee with the documentation that was used to make these decisions?
I'll be glad to relay your request.
Thank
to
you
the
very
people
much.
leading the effort.
I appreciate that. And the department's fiscal year 26 budget request and reorganization plan would eliminate the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations and the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, both of which are central to grid integration, reliability, and efficiency. So how does the department justify removing these capabilities while claiming that Genesis depends on a modern, resistant grid?
It is my understanding on OSED, as an example, that will continue. That is not being eliminated. It will be integrated into a different office. And on the other ones, I don't have any additional knowledge of the details.
I certainly hope we can get that information from the Secretary. I know, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, I was here on October 15th. Our Republican colleagues were not. So we could have had that hearing. I also want to note from an analysis that most of the canceled grants were made in states that Donald Trump lost in 2024. Do you think that's a coincidence, Dr. Gill?
Again, as I mentioned, I just haven't been involved in any aspect of the process of the PRP, so I just cannot comment on it.
I appreciate that. Well, I do request unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, to enter into the record a report from Energy and Efficiency News titled DOE's $8 billion kill list hits major grid projects. This describes how the department's terminations would further strain the grid energy supply and affordability. Mr. Chairman, I request a unanimous consent to enter that into the record. I ask unanimous consent to enter that into the record.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as I yield back, I just want to note, I served on the Bipartisan Artificial Intelligence Task Force. I'm glad Mr. Obernolte is here today, one of the co-chairs of that caucus, and the tremendous potential of artificial intelligence. But we didn't actually pass any legislation dealing with privacy and security issues. So I just want to put that on the table, that as we look at the potential for artificial intelligence, as the Genesis Project will do, we still must address the privacy, security, and other issues that surround AI. And I'm over time, and I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I'd like to recognize the representative from California, Mr. Obernolte.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Gill, thank you very much for your testimony today. I think the Genesis mission is incredibly important, and I want to thank you for your leadership on it. First question for you is, can you talk a little bit about the role that the Genesis mission is going to play in ensuring access to high-quality federal data sets? Because to me, of all of the things in the mission, I think that that is the most important, because a lot of people don't realize that the advancements that we've made, the scientific advancements we've made with artificial intelligence so far, have only been possible because of the availability of those data sets. Protein folding, for example. The only reason we were able to use AI to solve that problem with AlphaFold was the availability of a decades-old data set on protein structures. So that's the thing that's the most exciting to me about the Genesis mission, is the way that that's going to catalyze access to these data sets. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I'll be delighted. I mean, you are exactly putting the emphasis where it should be in terms of the potential. Let me elaborate briefly on the Protein Data Bank as an example. It's an effort, Brookhaven started in 1971 and with a set of collaborators. So after heroic efforts of 50 years, 200,000 proteins had been mapped using X-ray crystallography and other techniques. Then, because that had been created, it was possible to train a neural network to issue predictions of unknown protein structures if you had the sequence of amino acids. We went from 200,000 structures to 200 million in just the course of a year. This is a kind of transformation and acceleration that's going to be possible. There's nothing unique about doing this with just proteins. You could do it with any signal, with any kind of data. But you're right, we have to have a very concerted effort to go discipline by discipline and field by field, from astronomy to material science to chemistry and so on, and create and curate these data sets, sometimes because we have them, sometimes also because we're going to go out and get the data sets using our instruments such that it can be AI ready. When we do that, we will take AI beyond its ability to do language and code to its ability to do physics and chemistry and engineering. And that will change the direction of how we do R&D in the nation. But the data is the heart of the equation. So in our platform team, we have a team that focuses on the pieces of infrastructure and a piece that focuses on models, and there's a whole effort just around data.
Yeah, well, that's, to me, the most exciting part of the Genesis mission. I have a little concern that I wanted to raise with you, and that is the speed at which we're going to be able to get these done. And I know it's great that we're sitting here having this conversation. We're talking about moving at the speed of innovation, which is, it makes it seem like we're going to go do things very quickly. Unfortunately, federal government sometimes has a reputation for moving at the opposite speed. And the quantum centers, I think, is a good example. That was something that's taken us years to set up. And I think a lot of us here on the committee wish that that had gone more quickly. How can we make this, how can we speed up this process?
I could not agree more. I tell the team all the time, if there was one single failure mode that I see on this, is that we don't move fast enough. It's just, we just have to act like our lives depend on it, because the delta on capability is not 10% better. What we are seeing, what you can do right now with AI models compared to traditional systems, you see accelerations of 100x, 1,000x, 10,000x. When that happens, if we do not provide our national laboratories with the infrastructure necessary to do their work, and if we do not change the methodology with which we conduct science and engineering, and an adversary does it faster than us, they won't be 10% better. They'll be 1,000x better. And that's just an unacceptable outcome. So we have to do a lot, and this I am asking for the help of everybody of how we work together on doing that. The aspect of partnering with private sector and academia with creative ways to move faster is an accelerant. But you also can do a lot, and we can do a lot to be focused on having to deliver this. This is my #1 priority, and I know for the national lab directors, it's their top priority because it is the way that they can deliver their mission. But your point on urgency and knowing that every day counts could not be more important given the rate and pace. In AI, if you don't keep pace of what's happening in a week, you're behind. I really mean it. Like, it is moving at a pace like no other field I have ever witnessed.
Well, let's make sure that we keep the lanes of communication open so that we can work together to make sure that we force that pace of innovation to move a little faster than it has in the past. But thank you very much for your testimony. I yield back.
Thank you. And now the representative from from North Carolina, Ms. Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Gill, just to pick up on something that you referenced, our academic institutions, you know that they partner with the Department of Energy through competitive grants and contracts for research, training, student and sharing resources. They focus on energy, science, and security with funding, supporting projects from basic science to applied technology, utilizing the DOE labs for hands-on experience and developing the future energy workforce. However, in this administration, support for basic research and for our academic institutions has been, let's say, less than stellar. And our academic institutions do not always know that we have a reliable partner in the federal government. And so what role do you believe our nation's research universities have in your initiative? And how can you assure them that when they work with you, they won't have their grants canceled, their professors censored, all the things that we're seeing in this country today?
The core pillars on how we do R&D in our country rely on our federal government institutions, the support that we provide as a federal government. States increasingly also are important actors in investing in science and technology, the private sector, universities, and philanthropy. And I have a long track record of advocating that the contemporary version of Vannevar Bush, constructing an approach, an institutional approach with which we conduct R&D needs to be modernized to realize that ecosystem. And the university ecosystem that funds and supports science and engineering and educates our students in science and engineering and mathematics is indispensable. So I have a long track record and of working with them in the Genesis mission. They are going to be a pillar on the execution and the success of this mission in a few different ways. One, we need to educate our students differently. And what that means is, for example, the increasing the amount of dual degrees when you study engineering or physics or chemistry that gets accompanied with a degree in computing and AI. And I think we're going to see, we've seen the emergence in our academic programs of schools of computing that do these dual degrees. That's going to be very important. Rotational opportunities for our students to be also in the national laboratories and have experience there and access to infrastructure. And indeed, we do support a significant amount of extramural research investments in academia, which we are going to continue. So what I want to assure you is academia is going to be an integral part, and I'm very passionate about it, to make the Genesis mission a success.
And in conjunction with that, and finding the best and the brightest from all over the world to work on this incredible mission, we've seen a severe reduction in foreign students coming to the United States, being dissuaded from coming to the United States, particularly in the sciences. And I have seen this at NC State University. We've seen this all over the country. Could you speak a little bit about how important it is that we attract the best and the brightest students from all over the world to work on the Genesis mission?
Look, I'm an immigrant. Like, my own story is the story of, coming to America and falling in love with America and the opportunities and staying here and contributing to the success of the nation. So I'm very passionate about it. I will say, before I answer a question, one thing. While that is without a doubt a blessing, and we've got to continue to attract the best scientists, to contribute to the success of America. If you look at, and we look at this very carefully in the National Science Board when I was at the time, the level of dependency that we have put ourselves on foreign talent to support science and engineering is at an all-time high, all-time high. And one of the obligations we also have is we owe it also to ourselves to invest in Americans participating in science and engineering around that.
Yeah, without question, including at our HBCUs, our land-grant universities, and several of them are also suffering under the new regime.
So we need to invest in our own talent and allow them to participate in the future. And again, we were talking before about potential failure modes around that, and urgency was one. One of the areas where we have a lot of work to do as a country, particularly, is in K through 12 STEM education and mathematics. That's not a pretty story. We're not making progress on that front, and that is a thing with that eventually all of us are going to have to figure out how do we reverse that trend.
Thank you very much, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Self.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Gill, you have laid out in great detail how important this is, how fast moving it is, the importance we will see in the future. We know the Chinese playbook. They steal, they scale, they corner the market, and then they strangle. So can you lay out where those choke points might be so that we keep our research secure? Where might they corner the market? Where might they strangle, like they have in critical minerals and other areas? Can you just talk about the security? This is so important. Please talk about the security for us.
Yes, thank you. So first, let me address in the aspect of cornering the market. Because what we are involved right now involves a methodological change, a different way of doing things. Mm-hmm. If they secure an advantage of doing that ahead of us, we are going to pay a very dear price on that. Mm-hmm. So that goes back to the urgency, but let me address the question of how we're going to secure what we're building around that. So that is built by design. One of the things I've been very impressed at the department is how we run a managed security environment. And what that means is we have a fantastic intelligence team and counterintelligence team. Security is built into everything that we do, all our programs. And the Genesis mission, everything from the leadership to how we appoint people to how we're going to secure with our S&T risk matrix that we implement to secure all critical technologies, from day one is being built. In terms of I have top leaders in my leadership team for the Genesis mission that are devoted exclusively to this mission, to the security piece of it, and that involves cyber, physical, vetting, all aspects of it. We will do a part of it that is an open science endeavor. Some of it, of the efforts we have are proprietary, and obviously, as you well know in the department, we also do significant amount of classified work. But in all aspects, including the open collaborative piece, security is a center point of it because we know what's at stake. And we know that there will be adversaries that are looking to steal technology from us, and we're going to do everything possible, and we're very focused on that to prevent that from happening.
Good to hear, because researchers tend to want to be collaborative across international lines. Are there export controls that Congress needs to add to your portfolio? And specifically NVIDIA chips or chips along those lines?
So look, I think that I'm not going to get outside of my territory on the balancing on what that looks like. But I do think that there is an appropriate discussion happening between where the line is drawn. And this is an exercise of drawing lines and learning from experience. And the balance of that line drawing, which I will defer to others, is the balance of market access, and without adoption of the technology, you really don't have much. Even if you have great technology, if it's not adopted worldwide, it really is a problem. But also not give unfair advantages to people who wish us ill. So I don't envy the people that have to draw the lines. I'm not in the situation around that, but it is that careful consideration of market access and adoption and capability, and who should have access to that.
Okay, very good. And my last question is the cost sharing with our private partners. Sometimes this can be basically U.S. government totally funded. We need the innovation. We need the partners in the private sector. How is that cost sharing going to be distributed? Because we are in a asset restrained environment.
Yeah, well, I think it's a necessity. I go back to the number, right? So we want to transform R&D in the country and science and engineering in the country. That's a $1 trillion a year endeavor. What that means is a lot of people with capability and investment capacity. So the first step is to, send a beacon, a signal to this ecosystem to say, partner with us, help us be successful in a shared mission. Mm-hmm. The good news is there's a lot of enthusiasm for that. That, for example, could take the form of some of the partnership goals that have been announced of building computing capacity in one of our national labs, where the private sector is investing in building that capacity, and then that resource gets shared to advance both the mission of the labs and the mission of the partner. So we're going to have to figure ways for how dollars are invested in a manner that advances the mission and delivers outcomes for the American public. But we need to tap onto that investment capacity of the whole country.
Thank you, Dr. Gill. Very good. Chairman, I yield back.
Back. Recognize Representative Salinas from Oregon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Gill, for being here today. You're the principal advisor on science and technology for the Department of Energy, and you are supposed to advocate for science within the department. And I'd like to understand your views on climate change. And if you could just stick to really yes or no answers. I have a series of questions and very little time. So to start, do you believe there are any pluses to global warming?
Do I believe there are any pluses? Look, global warming can lead also to global greening of things. So, it's a complicated question. I know that you want the yes or no, but it's the complicated answers to this question.
Okay. Do you believe that concerns about climate change only exist because the news media talks about it?
I believe that climate change is a real phenomena that is very important to study, understand, and act on. So.
Okay. Do you believe that the link between climate change and extreme weather is just nonsense?
I think that's a complicated question.
Do you believe that climate change is not a crisis for humanity?
I think it's a very important problem. How we rank and what we do and in what order we do things is obviously a debatable topic, right, of how we prioritize actions we take.
Do you believe that climate change is a sinister tool to grow government power and shrink human freedom?
Those are not my words. I don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you. And you are correct. These are not your words. Every single one of these questions is based on a direct quote from Energy Secretary Chris Wright. And I'm glad that you are being thoughtful about the way we look at climate change, because prior to you coming to the administration, you've always been a very thoughtful scientist in the way that you approach climate change. And I would hope, as the lead scientist there, that you would continue to do that for the American public. And this is a global problem, and it is something that we need to take very seriously. And if we want to continue to be leading in this area, as I continue to say, as we continue to hold these hearings, this is a huge problem, not just for the United States, but for our workforce, for the industries that we lead on, for attracting talent around the world. And so I appreciate that you would hopefully continue to be the leading scientist in this area and be thoughtful around this. Yes, your public comments left no doubt that before you came to the administration, you considered climate change to be real and a major challenge for humanity. So I, again, hope that you would consider this to be a real challenge for the United States and for our place in the world. Your Genesis mission website includes a focus on, quote, an intelligent, resilient grid. 2 months ago, DOE canceled tens of millions of dollars to help Oregon utilities deploy smart grid technologies that will help our grid operate more efficiently and keep prices down for consumers. I hope you've told your colleagues in the administration how incredibly self-defeating it is to undermine deployment of the very technologies you're working to develop. Since your confirmation, how have you approached coordination on these issues?
So we've been very focused on the coordination of launching the Genesis missions, which I'll tell you is not an easy task.
Yeah.
So the good news is that thanks to the leadership of Secretary Wright, we have been working on being united across the entire department on launching this, because I remember I'm emphasizing that this also involves a change of methodology of how we problem solve. So that requires a lot of dialogue on all stakeholders about how we're going to work and operate as one single integrated team. That's number one. I think second, it's been a wonderful partnership also with the director of OSTP, Michael Kratsios, and so on, because the opportunity on the Genesis mission is not just for the Department of Energy. It is also across a wide variety of federal agencies around that. So we've invested an enormous amount of time of building a shared understanding of the moment, of what we're building, and how it will matter and apply to all the respective missions and offices in the department and beyond. So we spend a lot of time in that coordination, and I think, as you can see, also reflected by the great leaders that are behind me, honestly, I feel very proud of their leadership and what is happening in that we are united. It doesn't happen all the time that everybody is united on building a thing together, and it can have an impact across the entire country. So there's a lot of optimism in that, but we do spend a lot of time in talking to each other and informing and aligning programmatic investments.
Thank you again for being here. I yield back.
Thank you. And I'd like to recognize Representative Biggs from South Carolina.
Thank you, Dr. Babin, and thank you so much for holding this hearing today. And I appreciate you, Dr. Gill, for coming as our witness today. And it is pretty exciting to have all these directors sitting behind you, so thank you for your efforts in being present. The Department of Energy's new Genesis mission, it's an opportunity to create a new program that will maintain American preeminence in science for the foreseeable future. The announcement of the mission makes it clear that the 17 national laboratories provide essential contributions to this effort. As you know, the Savannah River National Laboratory operates in my state of South Carolina and has been working in the environmental management mission area for decades. They have developed a concept using AI that would allow the acceleration of cleanup at the Savannah River site and across the DOE complex while also saving billions of dollars. So, Dr. Gill, how can subsurface characterization data at federal sites, such as that of the Savannah River site and Hanford, be utilized as a national asset to accelerate environmental cleanup, improve domestic energy production, and enhance the critical minerals and materials extraction?
Thank you. Thank you for the great question. It's a bit connected to the discussion we were having before about when we were chatting about the protein data bank and so on. It's the same idea that in this case, you're dealing with a different data set, right, with subsurface data. Historically, it's very hard for us, and we spend a lot of complex computing cycles to actually take that data and characterize and extract meaning from what is happening. And because of what's happening with AI, we now have the opportunity to leverage those past investments, to leverage data sets that were painstakingly collected over many years and decades, and now utilize AI to be able to do calculations and do analysis around that in ways that was just not feasible for us to do before. But it's a wonderful illustration that you're highlighting of the power of the Genesis mission to unite a wide diverse of stakeholders, in this case for environmental management and cleanup, and ask the question of every domain expert, what data sets are so important to you? How can you use this new tool to be able to help your job, to do your job better? And as a consequence of that, how do we move either timelines for remediation or cleanup to the left, or how do we do things with lower cost than we could do before? So I think that's the opportunity we have in front of us. And the example that you gave is a wonderful illustration of how people are enthusiastically raising their hands and says, we can actually leverage the investments we've made to do something differently.
Thank you. So the Genesis mission, it requires ambitious build-outs in the AI, energy, and emerging technology sectors to secure American scientific dominance, which we've touched on earlier. So technologies such as fusion, fission, quantum computing, biotech, and advanced materials will both support and benefit from this effort, but both the mission and the supporting technologies need secure American supply chains. In your opinion, how can the United States ensure that all levels of the supply chain, from critical minerals to advanced manufacturing, are insulated from foreign influence, create American jobs, and secure American scientific dominance for the century?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and it's been a painful lesson, right, that we have learned as a country of building dependencies on critical technologies that in some way came to the surface, in part in COVID and other matters, and all of a sudden that was a central topic. So as we think about the industries of the future, like take fusion as an example, I think we have to be aware of that whole chain from the very beginning. Meaning we have an objective, we want to build fusion power plants, but there's going to be thousands and tens of thousands of components, right, on that supply chain. And part of the exercise of creating technology roadmaps is to render explicit the dependencies on that supply chain and to ask ourselves the question, how much of that we can do in America? How much of that we can do through friendshoring? And then what are the elements that it may take us longer to find alternatives, or where we have dependencies that are going to be very hard to break? But we have to do that from the very beginning of the industry creation, not after the fact, like it happened with semiconductors, right?
Sure. Thank you so much, and my time has expired, so I yield back.
Thank you. And now, Representative Fushi from North Carolina. Recognize.
Thank you, Chairman Babin, and thank you, Dr. Gill, for being with us here today. My home state of North Carolina leads in advanced manufacturing and is home to two Manufacturing USA Institutes, one in my own district. As you know, DOE is one of the key federal partners in the Manufacturing USA Network, which supports public-private partnerships focused on domestic manufacturing innovation. The department supports institutes that address energy industry challenges and helps manufacturers address critical topics like cybersecurity. It has come to my attention that the department has not provided its share of funding across any of the 7 advanced manufacturing institutes for the fiscal year 2025. While these institutes receive matching funds from industry, the lack of federal commitment has essentially halted all activities. So, Dr. Gill, given the Trump administration has been vocal about supporting domestic manufacturing, why has the department failed on this commitment to this critical program? And can you give this committee an update on the status of this program?
Unfortunately, I don't have the details on that, but I will be happy to take your question and get back to you on where that is at. If I may, I would like to make a comment on the relationship between what we're going to do in Genesis and the manufacturing closed loop.
Okay.
Because one of the things that we're very excited today, if you look at AI, the way we interact with AI is mostly through a dialogue, right? Through a language interaction. One of the things we're passionate about is moving AI into doing science and engineering. And one of the things that many teams in the labs are, really beyond excited is allowing AI to be able to direct like 3D printing and advanced manufacturing techniques to have closed loop systems of improvement. So anyway, it's just to say I'll be happy to relay your question back and see where we are on that front. But I just wanted to highlight that the relationship between what we're going to do in Genesis and also the physical world, the building things in the world, is going to be one of the frontiers we're going to push really hard.
Thank you for sharing that. So now turning to another issue that is critical to my district and to our nation's economic and national security, quantum computing. It is paramount that we prepare the next generation for this breakthrough technology, which is why I am proud to be introducing the Quantum Leaders Education and Advancement Program Act, or the QLEAP Act, very soon. This legislation reauthorizes and strengthens NSF's Quantum Education Pilot Program to expand access to quantum learning opportunities for students and teachers across the country. By integrating quantum science into STEM education at an early age, we can build a robust, quantum-ready workforce that you alluded to earlier that will sustain America's leadership in science, technology, and innovation for decades to come. The DOE has been instrumental in building out the national quantum research infrastructure through the National Quantum Initiative. So how is DOE helping ensure that the investments we make in research translate into a sustainable pipeline of students and educators with quantum literacy?
I'm very excited about that direction that you're alluding to, and I'll offer a parallel. A few decades ago, there were a set of leaders that created something that is now known as FIRST Robotics. And the idea was to inspire students through to technology by building robots and competing the robots with each other. And anybody who has gone to some of these events, it's a magnificent thing. It's an incredible thing. I think quantum has the potential to do something similar. This, for some reason, and I've been involved in the field for a long time, quantum sparks the imagination of people. There's an element of it of mystery and advancement. So it piques curiosity. And students have that curiosity around that. And because for the first time ever, now we have an amazing new instrument, these quantum computers that you can program, interact, and do things that you just couldn't do before. I think there's so much opportunity to use quantum as a vehicle, and we don't need to all become quantum scientists and engineers. Right. We want to be inspired into this world. But I just would encourage to continue on that vein, because it's not true for every field that it sparks the imagination of our kids, but this is one of them. And I think that that's really important. And the department will be, as I mentioned, will continue to be very supportive on the educational front. and working with our colleagues at the National Science Foundation too, and so on how do we inspire the next generation with quantum.
Thank you, Dr. Gill. I yield back.
Now, thank you, and I'd like to recognize the chairman of our Energy Subcommittee from Texas, Representative Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under Secretary Gill, how does the department's reorganization and the broader Genesis mission elevate the importance and visibility of the Office of Science across the complex?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So at the high level, sort of conceptually, as I was alluded to before, one aspect of it is aligning energy-related matters under their Secretary for Energy and focusing on science and advanced technology and innovation-related matters under my, the Undersecretary for Science. The Office of Science itself continues to be, right, a jewel around that. And what I mean by that, and I really mean it, it is the largest supporter of physical sciences research in the nation. And the foundational questions that get asked in each one of those offices is what inspires us to move the field forward and to allow us, in the context of Genesis, to create a new platform to help those scientists and those programs achieve their missions. One of the things we've done with the realignment is the new Office of AI and Quantum and the Office of Fusion. And I just wanted to touch a little bit the intent of what we have behind them. So take, for example, the quantum piece, and I'll talk about fusion too briefly. We have supported quantum information science for many decades, and that will continue to happen in the Office of Science. But thanks to those investments, we're in a moment where we can create now technology. We can create quantum computers, quantum repeaters. And the intent of that office is to say, let's make those capabilities real. Let's make sure that we're able to build those instruments. In fusion, it's the same story. We support fusion energy science. It's going to continue under the Office of Science, on the basic science. But it's time to build fusion power plants. So the Office of Fusion has that North Star. Let's make sure America wins in building fusion power plants and that we win in that new industry. So they're complementary. And sometimes people say, well, are you doing it in tension with the support of the basic science? We're not. We're saying because we've succeeded in investing on that, we have the opportunity now to create an industry. And that's what's the focus of those offices.
Well, thank you for that, but I'm going to get you to, can you go into some detail on how the reorganization is going to increase base load power while it drives down costs? Well, that's a little bit of a tricky one, isn't it? For consumers, and meets the needs of both industry and taxpayers. Can you elaborate on that, Doctor?
I will say a few things, but I will let my fellow undersecretary in the area of energy to follow up on that. But let me just say that one of the things that Secretary Wright has been so passionate about is that we need a world with more energy, not less. And that, and that may sound like a, simple statement, but it wasn't always the case where there was that clarity that we needed to actually do that. And that we're focused on investments that provide affordable and reliable and secure energy sources around that. And so the core focus on the energy dominance agenda is based on removing obstacles and encouraging our private sector partners, and when we have new innovations and new capabilities, bring them to bear, which the department has a long history of doing that, so making sure we do a better job commercialization. But to be able to do that, because I think by any reasonable estimates, probably we're gonna need to add like about 100 gigawatts or more of power in our country in the next 5 years to support reindustrialization efforts as well as artificial intelligence efforts. So we have a lot of work ahead of us.
Okay, you said that one of y'all's chores was to remove obstacles. You're not talking about Congress, are you?
No, no.
I mean, I'm just
Congress is our partner.
I'm just asking. So I want to go forward. How do you envision the private-public partnerships between the national labs and industry expanding? You alluded to that.
Yes.
As their capabilities continue to increase and as the Genesis mission evolves, how do you envision that happening?
I think that, I think there's two sort of programmatic ways which you can think about the private sector as an example. One is in traditional efforts as a performer, right? You have a program, they perform, and you do that. That's one thing, and we do a good job with that, and we continue to do that. But the other one is when a partner, and a partner is different than a performer in that context. A partner is about who has capability, who can help us enable the success of the Genesis mission, because maybe you have infrastructure or models or data sets or expertise around that. And we need to be able to be ambidextrous. We need to be able to do both. And so we're putting a lot of energy on the partnership models. And I think this is an area where I encourage ways and creativity from all of you to help us do that better. But it is indispensable, because if we don't do it in a spirit of partnership, we're not able to tap enough investment from our partners to help us succeed. And frankly, we cannot move fast enough.
But right before I yield back, Mr. Chairman, did I mention that the National Labs are the spearhead of this event? I yield back.
Thank you. Now recognize Representative Sykes from Ohio.
Thank you so much, Chairman Babbitt and Ranking Member for this committee, and welcome, Undersecretary Gill. Glad to see you here today. I want to go to something you just said. You said we need to encourage more energy, not less, which I agree. But why is it the prerogative of this administration to eliminate clean energy programs if we need more energy, not less?
Well, not all energy is created equal. As the Secretary has alluded many times, there are trade-offs around that, and there are choices that one can make depending on the level of reliability and cost structures. And that's a complex question of what is the optimal trade-off, but I'm just saying not every electron is created equal, and there are a lot of important trade-offs that one can make on what to choose and how to generate them.
Certainly. And what is the administration's position on what are the trade-offs? What are you, instead of clean energy, what are you focusing and highlighting?
I think the focus overall is on creating reliable energy sources that have a high degree of affordability around that and security. And again, this field is a field of trade-offs, so depending on whether you're doing something in a small setting or where you need a lot of concentration of power to power a factory, the trade-offs are very different.
So, Mr. Undersecretary, you are a scientist and most people are not. So if you could say that in layman's terms, is it natural gas? Is it nuclear? Is it fossil fuels? Can you be more specific? What does that mean, and what can I say to my constituents directly? Because that explanation is not something most Americans will understand.
Well, I mean, you can look at the facts, right? Like the majority
Can you please share the
power,
facts?
the majority of power, right, generation and across the entire spectrum, right? Not just for electricity, right, but for heat, for industrial production, and so on. The majority of that composition is composed of natural gas and coal. Nuclear is maybe 4 or 5% of the story. We're very committed to increase nuclear energy and bring a renaissance around that. We're very committed to increase also geothermal capabilities. In my portfolio, I'm speaking a little bit outside of my portfolio because that's not my area of expertise. We're very focused on advancing fusion, right? And I think hopefully, we can all agree that if we can crack that and make that happen, we would have a near infinite amount of, energy, and that would be fantastic news for the country. So those are like some of our priority areas, and I can speak of the area that I'm involved in, which is, advancing fusion energy.
Great, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but I too take some exception with what you're saying, because right now energy costs are at record highs for many Americans, and it seems like you're doubling down on what is already costing people a lot of money. So if affordability is in fact your goal, it seems like perhaps you should have some different objectives. So you know that Ohio has a strong partnership with the Department of Energy on nuclear energy, and namely through the Fission Surface Power project led by NASA Glenn in Northeast Ohio. And many on this committee, maybe not you directly, have heard that the road to Mars runs through Ohio. So for those in the room who are not nuclear scientists, or fission surface power cutting is cutting-edge technology that allows us to power infrastructure independently and off the grid. This project is aimed at enabling sustainable operations on the Moon and Mars, but could also be leveraged for more earthly applications. This includes military bases and even communities at cyber attacks or natural crises. The Department of Energy's drastic reorganization raises serious concerns about the capacity to execute on critical projects, such as the fission surface power, which you said is in your wheelhouse, compounded by more than $8 billion in cuts to clean energy projects. So with all the questions that I've asked you, Secretary Gill, how will the DOE fully fund and work together with the Department of Defense and NASA Glenn to achieve efficiencies in harnessing fission surface power while also cutting clean energy research and activities?
Well, I don't think any administration has been more enthusiastic about fission and advancing nuclear than this one. I mean, it's been a huge priority. We're quite literally restarting the fission industry in America, and including in the future SMRs and so on. So we're just very enthusiastic about restarting fusion power in America.
Thank you. Again, Undersecretary, I appreciate your enthusiasm, and I see your enthusiasm, but enthusiasm does not turn into energy. So again, can you talk a little bit more about why the clean energy projects that are a foundation of the Fissure surface power project has been eliminated without enthusiasm?
I just don't have any. I haven't been involved. I don't have any specifics.
But you just said that this fissure was your
I was speaking about
your
fission.
wheelhouse.
I was speaking about fission because
Yes, the fission is. Excuse me. You said that this was your wheelhouse, so now you don't have any information, but you are
to be precise,
enthusiastic.
my wheelhouse in the energy domain is fusion, not fission. But,
excuse me.
nonetheless, but yes, I was just alluding to the point where we're very excited and enthusiastic about fission as well as fusion and advancing that. Thank you.
Thank you. I yield back.
I'd like to recognize Representative Hurd from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Gill, welcome. What concrete milestones will Congress be able to use to evaluate whether the Genesis mission is succeeding or rather is drifting into some open-ended research initiative?
All right. Yeah, good question. So two things. On the infrastructure side, are we building AI flops? And what I mean by that is, AI computing capacity around that. I think we have very good FP64 double precision computation capacity in our supercomputers. We have relatively modest compared to what we
Can we
need.
quantify those in terms of like what that goal should be, the AI flops, or
I think.
or should we be doing it? I'm not putting you on the spot right now. I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
wondering if that's
I'll be
something-
happy to get you a number, a precise number on that to get back around that. But roughly speaking, right? I mean, aspirationally, we need to eventually get to have enough capacity to do the equivalent of a couple 100,000 GPU equivalents, right? On that order. I'm not saying we have it all solved, but I'm just saying as a North Star, we gotta go in a direction where the number of AI flops increases in the department, because that's a capability we need. That's number one.
What else?
I think the second one is on the data sets. What is the growth of the AI-ready data sets that we have? I talked before about Protein Data Bank. We talk about subsurface. Are we curating data sets? What's the size of them? How AI-ready they are? Second. Third, are we seeing models, AI models, capable of doing science and engineering? And you can count them in either on their capability, right, by their problem-solving capacity, and there's many evals and benchmarks that happen today, and also by the number. Our scientists and engineers have access to the very best models that do science and engineering around that. So those three, I would say, on the
Within what kind of
platform
time
side.
frame?
Say that again?
Within what kind of a time frame should we be looking at this?
Oh, no, I think we gotta look at this. Are we monotonically increasing on a quarter-by-quarter basis on this? And then the second component, those were very sort of platform-oriented discussions. The other one is, another thing to monitor is, what is the portfolio of problems that you're executing, right? Meaning, we are all talk about an AI for science, about AlphaFold. Are you doing 20 of them, 40 of them? What does that portfolio look like? Are you growing? Because that tells you that the scientists are adopting it, and the scientists are using the new methodology to problem solve. So those are metrics that I think would be useful to count on the platform side and on the sort of problem set side.
That's great. That's very helpful for us as public policymakers to know what does success look like and how close are we to getting there. Can you give me, I'm from Colorado, and is Dr. Verdon here? Yes, Dr. Verdon from the National Lab of the Rockies. Great to see you, Dr. Verdon. Dr. Gill, can you give us some specific examples of how Colorado-based institutions like the University of Colorado, like National Lab of the Rockies, like Colorado School of Mines, will support the Genesis mission? What kind of partnerships will the DOE be structuring to leverage expertise in fusion, advanced materials, AI modeling, and quantum technologies?
So, one of the areas that I would highlight, and this may be a recurring theme because it's close to my heart, but in Colorado, there's a magnificent quantum ecosystem. They are great, both at the university and recent startups that have spawned out there are fantastic. So, that's an area, for example. There are many areas where there's a lot of domain capability, but I'm excited about what Colorado has built in that space. And I think that as part of the Genesis mission, because we have as a goal to bring high-performance computing, AI, and quantum technologies together, that's an area where there's a lot of domain expertise, there's a lot of things that Colorado has to offer and the institutions there to bring to the table. So that's a good example. Not the only one, but it's a good example.
Excellent. We'll definitely keep us in Colorado in mind. Last question. What guardrails exist to ensure that AI-accelerated designs of materials and chemistry or advanced manufacturing doesn't inadvertently lower barriers for adversaries once the results become publishable or export controlled?
I think for us is managing our science and technology risk matrix very carefully. So we go technology by technology, and we make a very intentional determination of what's open, what's proprietary, what's totally closed. And I think that's a good management system that is in place. It's been in place since 2019. I think it's very robustly followed, and we're going to implement that strategy for the Genesis mission. And so it's not a binary of open and closed. I never liked that. Is what's open and what's closed, and to have the criteria of where are you putting each bucket, and are you being intentional, and are all the scientists and engineers and the management system clear about what needs to be in each bucket. And that's how we're gonna do it. We benefit a lot from the open collaboration, but we know that there are certain materials types or certain problems that cannot be open and must not be open, and we will behave accordingly.
Great, thank you, Mr. Gill. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to recognize a gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Amo.
Thank you, Chair Babin, and thank you to Dr. Gill for being here and all of the National Labs leadership for being here. It's good to see you all. Today, 324 days into the second Trump administration, is the first time that a Trump political appointee has appeared before the Science Committee this Congress. So I double down on what we heard from the ranking member, our great ranking member, who said that's unacceptable. Rhode Islanders, my constituents, shouldn't have to wait 324 days to learn why their energy bills are skyrocketing. And you all know that energy powers America's leadership in science and technology. It keeps the lights on in the homes of Rhode Islanders and warm during this very frigid winter already. But I have a message from my constituents in the 1st Congressional District. Energy costs are just too damn expensive. Last year, President Trump promised to cut energy costs in half within 12 months after taking office. Dr. Gill, President Trump has been in office for nearly 11 months. Are energy prices 50% lower than last year? Yes or no?
I don't think there is any administration that has been more committed to energy production and reversing
so that's no.
the trends around that. So
I would say that's no. And look, you're not the only person from the Trump administration who's been evading the promises that the president has made. Just last week, the president called affordability a Democratic hoax. But the American people know that's a lie, and affordability isn't a hoax. They know that residential electricity increased by 13% since President Trump took office. So how do we lower costs for consumers? Department of Energy workers are key. They fund research on the more cost-effective energy technology, help low-income households lower their energy bills by funding energy-efficient upgrades on their homes, and help maintain and improve our grid. So, Dr. Gill, do you agree that the Department of Energy and its workers are critical to keeping energy costs low for consumers?
The Department of Energy has an incredibly important set of missions: energy, scientific discovery, and national security, and I could not be more proud to work at the department, and each of those missions make America better.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad we can agree on that. Unfortunately, however, your words don't match President Trump and Secretary Wright's actions. Before your confirmation, they proposed cutting up to 50% of the department's workforce. Tell me how it's possible that firing half of the Department of Energy's workforce is going to fulfill the president's promise to cut energy prices in half for my constituents. I'm not asking that question. We know it doesn't help. The president has said that he has an energy dominance agenda and wants to expand all forms of reliable and affordable energy. Dr. Gill, do you agree with the president?
That the president has an energy dominance?
Yeah.
Yes, and we're very proud of executing that.
Well, then we need a strategy to match it. We need a strategy that works because unfortunately, as we've seen time and time again, the president's action, President Trump's actions don't match his words. And, you know, the president says we need to expand all forms of energy, yet he zeroed out the budget for solar and wind technology research in his 2026 budget request. He says he wants energy dominance, yet he issued a stop work order to halt construction of the nearly 80% complete Revolution Wind project off the coast of Rhode Island. Thankfully, despite those efforts, construction is back underway and the project is on track to power 350,000 homes in Rhode Island and Connecticut. Look, Trump's poor choices are jacking up costs for consumers. Experts estimate that his plan to force fossil fuel power plants to continue operating past their retirement dates could cost ratepayers over $3 billion a year in 2028. This is not a strategy. This is not the right policy. Dr. Gill, do you agree that discovering new, more efficient ways to generate, store, and transport electricity will help lower energy costs for Americans? Yes or no?
Look, I'm here today to testify on how we are going to build the most powerful capability that
Well, if you
has
got-
had to allow us
I'm
to discover
going to
faster
reclaim my
and-
time there. If you want to do that, you need the personnel, you need a strategy, you need to not undercut, right, the bold vision that we can have for this country. And look, I'm not putting it all at your feet. But you're the first person to show up here. If Secretary Wright was here, I would be saying the same thing because the actions are making life more expensive for the people we serve. And that's far more important than the agenda of a president. And so I encourage you to take this scientific leadership, the work that you've done, the ability you possess, and drive us to a more affordable future. With that, I yield back.
Now recognize a gentleman from Florida, Mr. Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Gill. Good to see you again. Thank you for spending time with us this morning. Apologize for my voice in advance. The Genesis mission is very exciting. I'm thrilled that it couldn't be coming at a better time in the country's history now. Like Mr. Fleischman, who spoke earlier, I have the privilege of serving on SST as an authorizer, but also as an appropriator on energy and water. So in that spirit, I'm eager to learn what you need from Congress and how we can effectively manage taxpayer dollars responsibly and effectively. So with that, a question regarding lines of responsibility with this project. Which DOE office, or is it yourself, who's going to serve as a single accountable program integrator for Genesis? And what authorities does that office have to direct or veto duplicative initiatives across the DOE enterprise?
So I have been appointed by Secretary Wright and consistent with the executive order to serve as the director of the Genesis mission.
Okay.
So you can have me as the accountable person.
Okay, so the buck stops with you. As you mentioned earlier, this is more than just a DOE initiative. How is DOE going to ensure Genesis activities aren't duplicating things that DOD or NSF or NIST may be working on?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. So first of all, is by ensuring transparency and clarity as to what we're building, that we're building this platform and we're building this portfolio of problems. And then through OSTP with Director Kratsios, we have a wonderful working relationship. We've known each other a long time. And it's the opportunity to then coordinate across the different agencies that want to participate to avoid precisely the duplication. I'll also say one thing. Since the launch of it, every federal agency that is related to this matter has reached out to me and to us to say, let's avoid duplication, let's leverage what you're building. And the reason that there's a lot of credibility is because of the national laboratories. Because we have such great expertise, domain expertise, I think a lot of other agencies are saying, let's leverage that build. We will apply it to our environment, so we may have to instantiate a version of the platform in our environment. The problems we solve with it may be slightly different, but let's not try to build the platform 3 times or 4 times across the government. So we're united on that effort.
Oh, very good. Thank you. and I'm very excited about what we're doing in the realm of fusion. I do have a fission question for you regarding the nuclear deployment timelines. What specific barriers, whether they be regulatory, workforce, supply chain, are preventing DOE from accelerating SMR and advanced reactor deployment under Genesis, and what resources or actions would measurably move those timelines forward?
Well, as you correctly pointed out, is on all of the above in that case. But I would highlight maybe for a follow-up, there's a very exciting effort as part of the grand challenges in our Idaho National Laboratory on an end-to-end story of what would it take to radically shrink the timelines from design to full build of a nuclear plant leveraging AI. So I'll just put it as a teaser. Maybe we'll be happy to follow with your office and share what that is, because it's really ambitious, but it is touching every element of it, right? From the conceptualization to what AI can use for permitting and so on, all the way to engineering, design, construction, permitting, and operations, end to end, a whole story of that. And it's really inspiring what they're trying to do.
So that's in development now, or it already exists?
It's in development. It's one of the projects that is in development now.
Oh, great. I'd very much love to see that. I know our entire committee would. Regarding supply chain vulnerabilities, so which supply chain gaps, whether they be software, semiconductors, critical materials, pose the greatest risk to the Genesis timelines, and what resourcing from Congress would you need to help mitigate those?
Look, I think unfortunately, there's a list there. I mean, critical materials, we've witnessed that. That's a serious issue. One of a portfolio of projects that we're kicking off is to find alternatives to some of those materials using materials design assisted by AI that are more earth abundant on that. So, but that's an area. And look, in this area, I've been part of this industry for a long time, and I've been talking about it in semiconductors. Obviously, there's a dependency there on a long chain there that reversing decades of offshoring some of that manufacturing capability is going to take a while. And that's a critical dependency, right? Because it underpins quite literally every aspect of what we try to do. So those are two examples, like critical materials and semiconductors, that are particularly acute.
Roger that. Thank you, Dr. Chairman. I yield back.
Now I'll recognize Representative Rivas from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for holding this important hearing today with the Department of Energy. I'm someone that also has a STEM background. I'm an electrical engineer, also trained at MIT, like you. I understand the importance of funding research programs, protecting scientific integrity, and continuing to innovate in our country. However, the Trump administration has waged a nonstop war on science. Instead of respecting science, this administration has attacked scientific integrity, research and development, and made draconian cuts to keep programs and projects. Under your leadership, DOE has terminated billions of dollars in projects affecting businesses and communities across the country this year. While the first major set of cancellations in May occurred before your confirmation, the much larger October terminations occurred after you joined the department. It appears that these decisions were just cold, calculated political decisions that the department did with little regard for how it would impact our nation's scientific integrity or energy affordability. Nearly all the October awards were from states that did not vote for Donald Trump, with 79 of these project cancellations coming from my home state of California. The highly political process leading to these terminations was a total departure from the standard, independent, and merit-based review that we expect from the Department of Energy. As the Undersecretary of Science, do you rely on qualified and experienced scientists in innovation, infrastructure, AI, science, and technology in their expertise to assist the nation in advancements and research?
Absolutely do. So the construction of the Genesis mission, every aspect of it is led by the extraordinary scientists and engineers and program officers that we have, and we rely on that expertise, of course, yeah. Very important, yeah.
So would you trust the expertise of 1,900 scientists from renowned institutions like the National Academy of Sciences, Yale, MIT, Harvard, the Carnegie Institution for Science, who, because of the Trump administration's actions, say that a climate of fear has descended on the research community. Researchers afraid of losing their funding or job security are removing their names from publications, abandoning studies, and rewriting grant proposals and papers to remove scientifically accurate terms, such as climate change, that agencies are flagging as objectable.
What I can share with you is the enthusiasm. I mean, today we had the 17 lab directors here, and the enthusiasm that people in the community have and, on applying and building what we're going to create in the Genesis mission to help them do their science better and to do engineering. And I think that that should not be lost. We are in a very special moment where there's a real inflection point on how science and technology are going to be practiced. I think the purpose of today's hearing is to understand how urgent and important that is, and just how motivated and united we are actually across the department and the community. And I would say beyond, right? In my conversations with industry, with academic leaders, this is a huge priority across the country. And that enthusiasm is what I want to be able to transmit, is what we're going to create and what we're going to build and what we're going to deliver. And I think it will come in the test of time. I'm convinced that people will come back and realize that that was a before and an after of how we practice science and engineering in our country, for the better.
I just want to make sure that you're aware of this concern. You know, like I mentioned, these 1,900 scientists that are concerned about the direction that the department, not just your department, but science research in the United States. You know, we're losing scientists to other countries because of the administration's actions. And I'm concerned. You know, I grew up in a country where science and tech, we were the leaders in science and technology. When I was an undergraduate in engineering, we were proud of that, and I want that to remain. I want us to remain that leader, this country to remain the leader.
You're not going to find a person that is more proud of the science and technology ecosystem of America. We are the leaders in that space. It's a contested space where there's a lot of people like challenging for that leadership. And what we are doing with the Genesis mission is to lay the foundation and build it and deliver outcomes that will ensure
I understand, but I think
actions
actions speak louder than words, and this administration and the Department of Energy are helping to ensure that instead of leading the world, we're ignoring facts, punishing hardworking businesses, and departing from the independent, merit-based view we expect of the scientific community. And with that, I yield back.
I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this meeting. Appreciate it. Dr. Gill, what guardrails is DOE putting in place to ensure that the AI systems developed under the Genesis mission provide reliable, verifiable scientific results, especially as researchers across labs, universities, and industry begin relying on shared models?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the wonderful benefits that we have in the Genesis mission is that we are anchored in physical reality. And what that means is that when we push AI models to do science and engineering, we have the wherewithal and the methods and the environment in our national laboratories to test whether that prediction or that hypothesis is actually true. So I think that that is a really special attribute of doing AI for science and engineering, is that in the end, reality pushes back and tells you whether what you said is true or not. And that basically is an implementation of the scientific loop in steroids to ground as what we do. Because no matter how much we push and invest in AI, if it's not accurately predicting how the physical world behaves, it's getting it wrong. And so that's a virtue that we have. Whereas in other areas, when you're doing language interactions and predictions back, as you know, that's very complex, right? Whether what is being said is true or not, and so on, is subject to interpretation. But fortunately, in physics and chemistry and mathematics and engineering, we have a way to close that loop with, I think, pretty good success.
So Genesis calls for developing self-improving AI models. How will DOE ensure these models are trained on authoritative data and produced reproducible results across different tools, labs, and commuting environments to ensure proper compliance?
What's going to guide us is the reason we're going to be able to do that is the quality of the scientists and engineers that we have. So there is a supervision which is guided by the expertise of the humans of saying what is high quality, what's not, what's bad data, what's good data around that. So, unlike in AI, in traditional AI, when you're just taking for example, all the text from the internet, there's a lot of stuff in there that is just like bad data and bad information and so on. But here, we're going to be guided by the expertise and the scientific instruments of our experts in the national laboratories.
So, Dr. Gill, one of the 2025 U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission reports recommends recommendations directs the Department of War to enhance its capacity to conduct space wargaming and develop realistic modeling and simulation of potential threats from China. So would the mission, the Genesis mission, be able to help the Department of War with critical modeling and simulation work needed that the report deems necessary for space control? And if so, then how can that happen?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes, and we would do that in a collaborative fashion with the Department of War. And recall that in Genesis, there is a platform, and then there is a problem sets, like a portfolio of problem sets. The one you illustrated as an example of simulations and wargaming is an example of a problem set that would benefit from the platform, from the infrastructure and the capability around that. And the way we would pursue that is in a collaborative endeavor with other peer agencies. And we are already beginning those conversations with a wide variety of them. So.
Great. Well, just one thing, then wargaming is sort of a more than just a three-dimensional effort, right? I mean.
Yes, you are correct, yes.
Okay, all right, I'm through. Yield back.
Yes, sir. Recognize Representative McBride from Delaware.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much to you, Mr. Chairman, and to Ranking Member Lofgren for bringing us together today. And thank you so much to our witness for being here today to talk about American leadership in science and technology through the work at the Department of Energy. Established in 1977 in response to rising prices and a growing energy crisis, the Department of Energy has long served the American people through its promotion of sound research that follows the scientific process, meaning that it does not pick winners and losers at the beginning, but instead pulls on all threads systemically to find the best answer. Earlier this year, the administration announced that energy dominance is a priority. To accomplish this, though, the Trump administration has been spending its time pulling the plug on energy projects, rearranging DOE, and on compiling and releasing reports that counter peer-reviewed scientific findings. All this is happening at a time when our energy infrastructure needs reinforcement and when we should be working to get all forms of energy on the grid. Instead, Delawareans and Americans across the country are going through their mail to find their energy bills have shot up, sometimes as much as 20%. The Department of Energy should be strengthening its commitment to research, innovation, and modernization, not sidelining the critical work and scientists who have carried that torch for decades. As we move forward, we must recommit to policies that put evidence-based decision-making and American innovation at the forefront of our energy strategy to ensure U.S. leadership in science and technology through the work at DOE. Dr. Gill, in a 2020 interview as the director of the Smarter Energy Research Institute and the director of Energy and Natural Resources at IBM Research, you stated that, quote, "We as the human community have other big challenges that science and technology can help us address, like climate change," end of quote. Earlier today, you reaffirmed that climate change is real. I agree with you. I agree with that. Today, wind and solar are among the lowest cost and fastest sources of new electricity generation available to deploy in the U.S. And DOE's own data shows that wind and solar help to keep electricity prices lower than the national average while meeting peak demand. I understand that the president's budget request was produced before your confirmation, but I want to ask you about the decision to submit a budget request that zeroes out wind and solar technology research from the department's budget. So as the department's principal advisor on science and technology, do you agree that the department should no longer support innovation in solar and wind technology?
So look, at the level of, I'll stay within my purview. At the level of supporting research and discovery on ways to advance a wide variety of forms of energy, including solar and so on, that is something that is going to continue to do that. As insofar as when there are large-scale projects, that depends on a whole complex set of factors as to the economic viability, the density of the project, or what needs to be done, et cetera. So I can't comment generically around that. But if you're asking the question, will we continue to support basic science that can advance and make a difference on all forms of energy? Because in the end, look, in the Office of Science, we support things that are very fundamental, like fundamental materials, fundamental catalysis, as an example, as a process. Those advances then permeate to a wide variety of applications, not just in energy, by the way. So that's our mission. We're going to continue to do that. And I love basic science because in the end, over long term, it turns out to be that you can support a myriad of applications that you never could understand at the time in which you were doing something that looked very esoteric.
I appreciate that answer and those worthy goals, but I'm afraid the president's budget betrays those values and those goals. Do you agree with Secretary Wright's claim that, quote, wind and solar energy infrastructure is essentially worthless when it's dark outside and the wind is not blowing?
Well, I mean, if the wind is not blowing, yes, the windmill is not producing any power.
But do you believe that the infrastructure is worthless when it's dark outside and the wind is not blowing, which is what the quote from the secretary said?
Look, I think the spirit of it is in a grid, like you have to treat the whole thing as a system, and there's a huge dependency of all those, of all those things. It's a very complex engineering system, and it's not easy to provide easy answers about the dependency of all these sources on a very complex machine, right?
I'll take that as you disagree with the secretary's
No, I
remarks.
didn't say that.
But
I didn't say that.
But I appreciate the answer, and I appreciate that I believe that you are serious about investing in science and technology. I just hope the rest of the administration listens more to some of the comments that you've made here. Thank you.
By the way, the secretary is a self-described science and tech geek and loves science.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. I recognize Representative McCormick from Georgia. Doctor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I love this topic. It's never what the questions that are prepared for me, but the questions that are interesting. We want to talk about science for a second. Is nuclear part of scientific discussion?
Yeah, of course. Nuclear energy is a huge part of our scientific endeavors, and then, of course, as an energy source in addition.
Of course. So when we talk about, it was just brought up, wind and solar. Wind and solar. How many solar panels would it take to power one AI supercenter or a processing center, a data center, something like that? How many roughly acres?
I don't know the exact number of like how many hundreds of acres, we would need to do that.
Is there a parabolic energy consumption going on in America right now? A parabolic increase in energy consumption? Absolutely, right? That's
we're
indisputable.
We're going to double the need of what we have.
Is that going to go away?
No.
Of course not. So I want to have a real discussion instead of a fabricated one based on carbon emissions, which are going to happen one way or another. Now, it's interesting. A Democrat physicist who wrote a very good book called Unsettled, named Koonin, who was on Obama's climate control panel, wrote a very good book on science and how we've warped science into something it's not. That we're paying universities to do studies without peer-reviewed science that's talking about global warming that are not accurate. We could talk about how many hurricanes there are. We have fewer. The impact on human society and life in general, if it's a negative or a positive, whether we can stop it, what kind of cycle we're on, that's science. But when we warp science and we try to pretend like we know what we're talking about based on inconclusive studies, that's not an honest discussion. It is my belief, and I want to know if it's your belief, that we cannot power the future of America without nuclear energy as the primary source of really exponentially increasing energy production. Would you agree?
I think nuclear today represents, I think, 4 or 5% around that. Like we would.
I'm talking about
to
the
see it
future.
Double the future. Yeah, we would like to increase it, both nuclear and fusion as well.
Is it realistic to think that you're going to increase exponentially power production, which we need, which we can't avoid if we're going to be competitive with the world market, without nuclear?
I think nuclear is an essential element of our power ecosystem.
I agree. I'm not against solar, I'm not against wind, but when I look about the realities, the impact, the cleanest energy source, the biggest energy source, of course, Georgia leads the way. We're the only state in America that has actually produced power plants in the last several decades, but we're way behind because we've had people throw roadblocks in there. We think we can close down clean coal, we can close down natural gas, we can do other things that are, somehow or another, we're going to get down to living in teepees and cooking our fires somehow without even burning wood to produce energy. It just doesn't make sense. I want to have a reality check on this. I think modular reactors, the security, plugging in old nuclear-powered ships into the grid instead of scuttling them. I want to have a real conversation about the future of science and how we can recondition nuclear waste into something actually usable again. That's real science. That's actually addressing carbon science too if they want to. But let's have a reality check when we talk about all the energy sources and the carbon reduction, how it impacts the world. We outsource rare earth minerals to China. If we insourced it, it would be much cleaner. We're going to consume the same amount regardless, but we don't have an honest conversation. We'd rather regulate it here, let somebody else do it, have them control our future, and at the same time do it with more pollution.
Yeah.
That's the dishonest conversation I think we're having from the other side of the aisle. Would you agree?
You know, I think, I mean, you've given the example that when we offshore production of an item that in the end we're going to purchase, and through the process of offshoring ends up being produced, you know, generating more pollution and emissions and so on than what we were doing, we're making everything worse. Around that. So sometimes it is the case here and in Europe where we've entered in very negative feedback loops of deindustrialization and offshoring, and we still want to buy the goods of what is being produced. It's not like we said we don't need them anymore. And you end up where everything is worse off. Less employment, less factories, more pollution, everything is worse off. And that is what we're reversing.
So this is the take-home point, and Mr. Chair, I want to really emphasize this because I think this is the important part that you and I agree on, and which the other side of the aisle kind of gets lost in the details on. By producing clean energy in America, it doesn't mean just wind and solar. We're going to have an exponential increase. We're going to have an exponential need for rare earth minerals, and the fact that we outsource that to other countries, put our destiny in their control, actually increases pollution, increases carbon imprint, and actually has nothing to do with science. And in actuality, we've already done the science on this. We know that all the carbon and all the transportation, planes, trains, automobiles, ships combined is about 0.00017% of the atmosphere. And yet that's what they base their entire conclusion off of when they talk about carbon imprint, and then they outsource it to another nation that actually increases that anyways. It's not a scientific conversation. It's not an honest conversation. We need to get over that. If we're going to dominate in the next generation of technology, space, and everything we'll do to benefit this great nation, we got to have a real conversation and be honest about it. And I don't think they're doing that. Thank you. With that, I yield.
Gentleman's time expired. Thank you. Recognize the Representative Gillen from New York.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and thanks to the ranking member for holding this hearing. Thank you, Undersecretary, for your service and for being here today. My name is Laura Gillen. I represent New York's 4th Congressional District on Long Island. I immediately have to take issue with my colleague, Mr. McCormick's comment that we are not seeing an increase in hurricanes and superstorms. In fact, I watched a good portion of my district washed away to shore because of Superstorm Sandy. And in fact, I think climate change is real, and I think any scientist would agree with that comment. However, usually this tends to be a more bipartisan committee where we agree with each other, and I was pleased to to hear the chairman. I was pleased to hear my colleague, Mr. Weber, earlier talk about the need for the United States to maintain and even enhance its dominance in fields like AI and quantum computing. However, the dramatic cuts we've seen to research and funding for our universities is contrary to that goal and to the goal of the Genesis mission. So I would ask you, Undersecretary, to use your very powerful voice to advocate to increase funding for these very important things to make sure that we can maintain that excellence and that dominance in these fields. America's ability to lead the world in AI depends on quantum computing, and Long Island, which I represent, is emerging as a powerhouse and a national leader in this space. And we have one of the 5 national quantum research centers at Brookhaven National Laboratory, and we are the home to Stony Brook University, which just received $300 million from New York State to establish a quantum research and innovation hub. Just recently, I introduced H.R. 6351, which is a bipartisan bill I'm proud to advance with my Republican colleague, Congressman Jay Obernolte of California. And our bill will promote regional quantum hubs on Long Island and across this country by fostering partnerships with the private sector and harnessing innovation to grow our economy. So this bill will update the National Quantum Initiative and to help promote regional innovation corridors. And I'd like to know if your office will commit to working with my office about this bill and on ways we can work together with the administration to advance this important initiative, not only to the regional quantum hubs, but also to our nation's dominance in this field.
Thank you for the question. As a New Yorker of 22 years, I'm also very proud of the ecosystem in science and technology in New York. As you correctly said, Brookhaven is a fantastic lab, and in quantum, they do amazing job. In terms of some of the new investments, I announced just a few weeks ago the renewal of the National Quantum Initiative Center, $625 million, and Brookhaven is a recipient of that. So I'm counting on a lot of fantastic work there. And yes, I'll be delighted to work with your office on the reauthorization and on these topics.
Thank you, Undersecretary. How will DOE continue to prioritize investments in regions with existing strengths in this field, like Long Island?
Well, when we look at, let's bring it back, for example, in the Genesis mission as a context, we look at the world as capabilities. Who has capabilities? Who has strengths in terms of either scientific infrastructure or expertise, right, or scientific instruments around that, and problem sets that are of great relevance. So, New York State and in Long Island, with both Stony Brook and Brookhaven, there has a lot of capabilities in there, so I think it's in a good position to contribute to the success of it. But yeah, I think it's to continue to foster those strengths, and the capabilities speak for themselves.
Well, Undersecretary, in this regard, I would love it if you would consider visiting Brookhaven Lab with me to go and see how we can increase our footprint there and additionally fund the research that's happening at that exciting space.
I would be delighted to do so.
Excellent. We'll give your office a call. Thank you, Undersecretary. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Representative Begich from Alaska, you're up next. You're recognized. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Gill, can you describe just briefly, in terms of human outcomes, what the top-level objectives of Genesis are?
So our $30 trillion economy depends on, in no small part, in innovation. Like, we are a high innovation economy that is powered by the $1 trillion we invest in R&D, and the outcome we seek is to double the productivity and impact of America's R&D. So for all practical purposes, a decade from now, it would feel as if we were investing 7% of GDP into our economy. And I would expect that a meaningful percentage of the GDP growth expectation and health benefits and national security will stem from that doubling.
That's tremendous. Do you believe that researchers have a responsibility to answer the question as to what can come from core scientific discoveries that we may find with Genesis?
Yes, I'll put some asterisks that, when we invest in basic science too, sometimes we don't know exactly what's going to happen, right, or what the applications are going to be. But one of the things I do like very much about the national laboratories and the Department of Energy is that it's very mission-driven. So therefore, they pursue science in the context of what does it mean for energy or national security, et cetera. And both of them are necessary.
Okay, I'm gonna click us out a few notches. Describe Kardashev Level 2 equivalency as a possible outcome of breakthrough energy research. What do you imagine that humanity may do with such enormous energy access?
You mean, if we could harness all the energy of our,
Well, or the
our solar
equivalent,
system?
the equivalent thereof, right?
Well,
With fusion,
I can't even imagine, like, even type 1, just even harnessing a fraction of what we have here on Earth, that would be transformative. I mean, look, if you look at, like, fusion as an example, it's just hard to overstate if we could overcome that. That would be a civilization-altering event, right, of what it would mean, and our ability to scale out. But in the end, as the Secretary always eloquently says, like, energy is life, right? And our ability to expand dramatically or be able to harness an increasing amount of the capacity that the Earth or the solar system or going beyond, I can't even think, in the end, we're going to be rate limited by energy, right? So that would expand the possibilities of humans in every way that we want to take them.
Agentic recursion carries the promise of incredible efficiency and parallel branching in the pursuit of accelerated solutions exploration. But such an approach has the potential to outrun oversight by researchers and safety teams. Do you have any concerns about unbounded agentic capabilities?
Yeah, we cannot build systems that are unbounded agentic capabilities. Those are irresponsibly built. But by the way, that's true in software too. Like, just in general, building a recursive system without, like, the right feedback loop is a very bad engineer system.
Is this something that Genesis is considering and thinking about as they're planning their rollout?
Yeah, but we're going to build robust, high-quality engineered systems. We're not going to build like a,
An
unbounded recursive
okay.
system. That is just very bad engineering practice.
So fear of action by adversaries as a motivator for investment decisions is understandable, but do we have any strategy for how we will address adversaries who eventually make the same breakthroughs that we're expecting to make?
To run faster.
So the answer is
So we
continued
do a
speed
lot, as I
forward.
alluded before. We're going to do a tremendous amount to protect what we're creating, and we're building our security infrastructure for the Genesis missions from day one on every aspect of it, on physical, cyber, personnel, intelligence, counterintelligence, all of it. But whether we succeed or not as a country on this is in our ability to get our act together and execute and run faster.
Thank you. And just as a concluding remark, I think it's important for us to ask the questions, what are we going to do with what we discover?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just as important as the discovery itself. And I would encourage the teams involved at Genesis to start to explore the answers to some of those questions. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you. I just want to assure you that aspect of it, just to assure you, is like there are the twin aspects. There's a bill element and the what for, and that's the portfolio of problems. Is all intentional as to what problems are we trying to solve.
That's good. Great to hear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to recognize the representative from California, Mr. Whitesides.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by recognizing my colleague, Representative Begich, for raising the Kardashev scale. I thought I would be the first one to raise that, but you beat me to it. I would note that the Type 2 is capturing all the power from the sun, from our local star. So I commend you on that reference, sir. Yeah, thank you. Okay, my name is George Whitesides. I'm the congressman from California's 27th District. I want to thank you for appearing before us. I appreciate people of your caliber stepping up for our country to take on hard jobs, working on behalf of the nation. Part of that hard job is, of course, congressional oversight. And unfortunately, there is much for us to discuss on that today. I'd like to focus my time on the critical issue of energy affordability and how transparency, or a lack thereof, at the Department of Energy increases the cost that working families, small businesses, and utilities pay for their power. Over the past year, DOE has terminated billions of dollars in federal energy grants, citing internal financial reviews and conclusions about economic viability. These actions include cuts to projects like ARCHES, California's hydrogen hub, which would have built a clean energy economy across the state and in cities like Lancaster, California, which I represent. These were projects that went through public vetting, attracted significant private sector investment, and supported thousands of good-paying jobs. They were selected precisely because they could contribute to a more diverse, reliable, and ultimately lower-cost energy mix. Most importantly, the cancellation of these plans drives energy costs up. Will the department commit to release the rationale for canceling the hydrogen hub projects in California and the Pacific Northwest?
Congressman, I will relay your request around that. I haven't been involved in any aspect of the whole process, but I will take your request and get back to you on that.
Please do. The financial and scientific analyses behind many of these determinations have been kept secret, and utilities, state regulators, and markets feel it. That risk ultimately shows up in higher electricity prices for my constituents. So I would appreciate that. I want to talk a bit about the Genesis project. I want to talk about model inversion. What are you doing to ensure that a finished Genesis AI model cannot be tasked to reverse engineer the sensitive or dangerous government data it was trained on?
The hierarchy of that is depending on whether we intend that model to be part of an open science effort, whether it's proprietary or classified. And each one of those then has a completely different protection mechanism where we will treat the model in the same way we treat restricted data. Basically, it's just not available to anybody that doesn't have either a right to know or a right to access around that.
Will the private companies be allowed to export model weights from finished Genesis models? I've heard that they might be.
Again, that will be regulated depending on what context. If you're doing an open scientific effort, like we would just intend to publish the data, like it's very standard, obviously, in open science work to make the data sets available. The fact that they're encoded in a neural network is not fundamentally different than one.
So
but
you'll
if it's
have
proprietary or classified, that will never happen because we're not going to allow or treat. Look, models are data too, so we will treat it with the same level of access control that we treat data.
How many, so you'll have discrete subject level models? Is that the plan?
We will certainly have. These are going to be hybrid models, so it's not going to be one single model to rule it all.
I think the tricky part is that you're not going to have single models. Sorry, you're not going to have discrete models. You may have mixed models, and there I think you do have the danger that you could have inversion out.
Well, we will have a whole variety of models. I mean, maybe just to clarify, it's not going to be one single LLM that has everything, right? So there will be, domain models where there may be a chemistry model that's very specific. But to just be clear, if that model is being trained with, like, say, an open scientific data sets for chemistry, well, that model will be available openly in the same manner. But if that was trained with proprietary, we're not going to mix and match. We are cognizant of the fact that, like you said, you can reverse data sets from access to the models to query. So we will treat models like we treat data, right? Because in the end, the way I always look at models is it's just a different representation of the data, right? You're just encoding it in the weights of the neural network, and you're establishing semantic connections between these data.
So I'll have 20 seconds. So there's no back propagation between sensitive data sets and private companies. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we are not going to allow, whether it's confidential data from a specific area or a partner, or let alone classified, that's a whole other ball of wax. We're not going to allow that to go and flow in an, sort of like an uncontrolled manner to a party that should not have access to the data. We know that models represent data, so we will treat it like we don't share data sets to the people that don't need to have it.
I have a few other questions which I'll submit. For the record, I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Dr. Kennedy, Representative Kennedy from Utah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Dr. Gill, it's great to be with you. And you have my admiration and respect for being able to sit for long periods of time in one place. That's this remarkable capacity that you have that way. But I imagine you've done that for many tests in the past. So thanks for being with us today. Last week, I introduced the Genesis Act to codify President Trump's Genesis mission into law. This mission is a pivotal step toward unleashing American ingenuity through artificial intelligence. Despite research budgets soaring since the 1990s, scientific progress has stalled in many respects. To beat China, we need a new focus. Genesis will use America's great technological advantage to dramatically improve our nation's national, economic, and health security, including biotechnology, critical materials, nuclear fission and fusion energy, space exploration, quantum information science, and semiconductors and microelectronics. While I'm very excited about the possibilities of AI and the constructive role the federal government can play, states like mine, Utah, have already been leading the way, establishing innovative regulatory approaches that power economic development while maintaining important safeguards. The federal government should treat states like partners and not adversaries as we use AI to power economic progress. Utah is looking to lead the nation when it comes to deploying nuclear energy. Earlier this year, courtesy of Dr. John Wagner, the director of the Idaho National Laboratory, I had the opportunity to visit the Idaho National Lab. It was a great experience, actually. I learned a ton and witnessed firsthand some of the innovative research and practical applications they are working on to accelerate the development, licensing, operations, and deployment of advanced nuclear reactors. And Dr. Gill, I was curious, what role do you envision for our national laboratories, particularly those with significant nuclear expertise and testing capabilities like Idaho has, in executing this vision?
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, as you correctly pointed out, when you talk to Director Wagner about the ambition that they have of transforming the entire life cycle of nuclear from design, permitting, build, operation with AI, it's really impressive how it's going to change. So Idaho National Laboratory as an example for nuclear, but it applies to other national laboratories that are involved in this. This area of nuclear, improving the overall productivity, the safety, the efficiency, the economics of fission overall, including also SMRs, is going to be a big priority. So in our 3 buckets of applications of the Genesis platform to solve problems in energy, nuclear is going to be a big one. So nuclear, the grid, fusion, those are big areas where we're going to put a lot of energy, but this is an area that is a big priority.
I was heartened to hear that you meet weekly with the directors of the labs. I think that's outstanding coordination, and I was also impressed at the Idaho National Lab that by July 4th of next year, they hope to have an
SMR
nuclear reactor in the works, and I was in that chamber that could feasibly be a reactor within the next few months. So I also had a question about, I'm a big believer in accountability and tracking. How will the department ensure that we're hitting the key benchmarks and maintaining an edge over China?
Yeah, so we are going to implement, so first of all, there's a system of accountability with a single owner, like with a single throat to chuck, which is me, and you can hold me accountable to making sure that we're delivering those. But we are forming a great leadership team with the partnership of the lab directors and the different program offices. We're going to have dedicated program management as well, that we're recruiting some of the very best people around that. And then obviously there's associated with that, we have very quantitative metrics of what it means in terms of platform capability, the execution of the portfolio. And we are gonna run with a tempo in terms of an agile methodology of executing things where every week matters. And we gotta see progress, like I mentioned before, on whether it's AI flops or the compute capacity going up, the model capabilities going up, the data sets that we're curating, the execution of the milestones of the portfolio of problems. So we are going to implement it with all the best practices, and I'm going to try to bring all the expertise of executing things in the private sector, but recognizing that the public sector is different for a reason, but is still maintaining a tempo and an accountability to deliver what we need to deliver.
Well, I think we have the right guy for the job. Thank you for being that way. The last question is, particularly Western states like Utah, we will be key to delivering the energy production needed to power AI. How does the department intend to work with states to make sure we have the infrastructure in place to actually deliver on this promise?
I think states, one of the things I've been so pleased to see over the last few decades is the role that states are playing now in science and technology. And now, obviously, with the interdependency of energy and computing, where they are like the two sides of almost the same coin, I think the policies that states choose and the capabilities that they build will be the determinant factor in enabling things like Genesis to be successful. I really believe it, we will not be successful without the states, right? Because they have certain capabilities, whether we're talking on workforce or infrastructure or investments that they can make that are gonna be necessary to move at the scale of the whole country.
Thank you, Dr. Gillen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening this hearing, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back, and now we go to California to Representative Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Undersecretary Gill, for being here today. I really appreciate your passion for scientific research and your acknowledgement about our challenges around energy. One of the most troubling aspects of DOJ's reorganization has been the elimination of the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, or OCED. In fact, OCED was established in law as part of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Job Act because DOE unfortunately had a bad track record of managing large-scale demonstration projects. So Congress, on a bipartisan basis, established OCED to take those lessons learned and to manage future demonstration projects in a more systematic and fiscally responsible way. It seems to me that dissolving that organization is questionable, legally speaking, and it will hamper DOE's ability to effectively address the administration's own energy priorities, such as ensuring the success of the next generation of nuclear demonstration projects. So I'm wondering if you can explain first how the elimination of OCED is consistent with the law, and secondly, as the department's principal science and technology advisor, can you explain how the elimination of OCED furthers the department's efforts to, in the DOE's words, accelerate scientific and technological leadership?
Thank you for the question. I was able to check on that. OCED is not going to be eliminated.
Okay. So how will that then coordinate with DOE, and why was that announcement, why was that even made?
I don't know all the details on the communication around that, but I can just tell you, like, that's one of the things I was able to check, and it's just not going to be eliminated.
Okay, I appreciate you checking on that before coming here. Thank you. I want to go back to the question around climate change and fossil fuels. So fossil fuels are by nature limited. They are a resource. They're traded. And because of that, they are inherently price volatile. And we've seen prices fluctuate wildly over the years, most recently with natural gas, in fact. Whereas renewables, on the other hand, are unlimited by nature. And once their initial investments are made, they're price stable. And every metric shows that they lower costs for consumers who are already cash-strapped and do so into the future without that kind of a question about volatility. Not to mention, of course, the climate impacts that are undeniable, despite many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle trying to deny that climate change exists. I'm happy to hear you recognize that it's a real thing, that it's causing, has the potential to wreak havoc on our planet, and we've certainly seen that. Talk to any airline pilot, they'll talk to you about turbulence and the increase in that. You, in a 2020 interview as a director of a Smarter Energy Research Institute and the director of the Energy and Natural Resources at IBM Research, you stated that we as the human community have other big challenges that science and technology can help address, like climate change, and I thank you for that. And we also know that wind and solar are quickly deploying at some of the most low-cost and fastest sources of energy generation available. I understand that the President's budget request was developed before your confirmation, but I was concerned to see the budget for wind and solar cut to zero. I'm wondering if you agree whether that is the correct way we should be budgeting and that the department shouldn't be supporting innovation in solar and wind technology.
The department continues to support innovation in a wide variety of energy technologies, including solar and so on. So from an innovation perspective, on an investment on core science capacity, we're going to continue to do that.
But certainly we've seen that the amount of the budget is no longer as supportive of solar and wind research as it is towards other kinds of energy, such as nuclear. We've even seen permitting efforts be focused on fossil fuels and not on wind and solar. Secretary Wright claimed that wind and solar energy infrastructure is essentially worthless when it's dark outside, when the wind is not blowing. And you heard that quote earlier, and someone asked you, and you gave a very factually accurate answer talking about the entire grid and reliability, and that was very clever of you, but it didn't really answer the question as to whether you agree that wind and solar is unimportant, as seems like the Secretary is implying, and that I just want you to reinforce whether or not you think wind and solar plays a key role in energy reliability and in cost, and also whether distributed energy is important in areas like mine, where our utilities have to power down because of wind events, and when, because of natural disasters, we sometimes have communities that are cut off from the larger grid but need local reliable energy to run hospitals, to run emergency stations. How important is wind and solar in those kinds of equations?
I think a big part of the spirit of what Secretary Wright talks about is that all energies have trade-offs. and there are engineering trade-offs and cost
I
trade-offs
understand
around
that, and that was your answer earlier, but
And-
I'm asking how wind and solar then particularly fit into that. I understand that there
it
is a role
depends.
for
The answer is
nuclear,
it
there's a
depends.
role for fossils, but it seems like he is trying to discount the role or say that wind and solar are unimportant or less important or in some cases worthless. I understand that the sun doesn't shine at night, but storage works at night. That's the whole purpose of it, and as Congressman Whitesides pointed out, that's the best piece of fission we have available is up in the sky. So do you agree with him that we should be de-emphasizing solar and wind?
Again, it's just so hard to answer the question generically. Depends on what context and in
Well,
what
I
region
just told
and so
you
on.
in
It
an area-
depends, right? Yeah, I just cannot give an answer. It just like depends on so many circumstances. Grew up in Europe and I've seen what has happened there with
I'm
electricity.
sorry to
prices.
interrupt, but
I yield
time's
back.
up.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Dr. Gill, you can kind of relax because Dr. Babin had to leave, and they put me in charge, and now we're really in trouble. But anyway, I just want to make a comment. I really appreciate all 17 of the national labs, and I admire the way you cooperate and coordinate your activities. And it's especially important. I spent some time with Purdue University and the Extension Service as an unbiased source of information. And so I think you maintain that. So it gives me great confidence in our country and our ability to stay ahead of the world. And for some of the comments you've made, some of the other comments that have been made, so I really appreciate the work that you do. And I've had the opportunity to work with Paul Kearns out of the Argonne National Labs, and he shared what all of you do. So very proud of you, and thank you for being here. And now I'll move on. Representative Riley from New York.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Undersecretary, for being here. I understood you worked for 2 decades at IBM?
Yes, 22 years. 22 years.
22
yes.
years. My dad was there for about 25 as a maintenance worker in the waste treatment plant. So you've gotten a lot of really important questions today. This is by far the most important question. Do you know where IBM was founded?
That's a good question. In Endicott?
Yes. All right. I was about to say, you're killing me, dude. All right. Good. Yeah. So it's in Endicott. It's my hometown. I represent it. It's a huge point of pride for us. Do you know what this is by any chance?
I was admiring, what tabulator machine is that?
Exactly. So I wanted to share this because this is what we do at our best in America, and in particular in upstate New York. We make things that make the world better. We are really good at manufacturing the most important stuff. And so 1935 Social Security Act is enacted. And you think about that time period, this new program, think about all the data that's needed to keep track of the Social Security checks, the Social Security numbers, and there's no computers. There's no computers. And so how are we going to get this problem solved? And it was American ingenuity and American manufacturing that met the moment and solved the challenge. And so IBM in my hometown in Endicott, we built this. This was invented and built in Endicott. It's one of the first tabulating machines. It's one of the first computers in the history of this country. And without it, and without the men and women in my hometown who built this, we might not have Social Security today. And this was like, I think about it, it was good jobs, really good wages, and on top of all that, just a huge amount of pride because we were building things that solved big problems, made the world better, and improved people's lives. And so I keep this in my office as sort of a reminder every day of what we are capable of and our promise and our potential. I do think, though, over the last 20 or 30 years as a country, we've really lost our way when it comes to American manufacturing. We've gotten into terrible trade deals over the years, NAFTA, letting China in the WTO, that have shipped good manufacturing jobs overseas. And that not only hollowed out the middle class in this country, hurt factory towns like Endicott and Johnson City, the Triple Cities. It also really undermined American competitiveness. And so we're now dependent on adversaries like China for critical minerals and energy storage and semiconductors. The global market share of American manufacturing from 2000, when we let China into the WTO, has gone from 25% down to 10%. During that same time, China's gone from 6% to 45%. We're going in completely the wrong direction, and now China has 92% of the global market for critical minerals, nearly 100% for batteries. And so I think we're at a real inflection point right now in this country, and I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, I think we've got to find common ground around the idea that it is time to rebuild American manufacturing, because that's going to rebuild the middle class, and it's going to allow us to compete in the world. And for me, like, I'm not saying we need to go back to making this, but what I am saying is I believe so deeply in upstate New York's future as a manufacturing powerhouse, because I'm so proud of what we've done in the past. Binghamton University now is on the cutting edge of research and development. Incredible things they're doing there around energy storage, critical minerals. What we have to do with your help is take all of those amazing breakthroughs out of the labs on campus and get them onto factory floors. We have the hardest working people you're going to meet. I just sat down with our trades unions last weekend. They are ready to build. The sleeves are rolled up, ready to go. And so what I wanted to do, I would love to have you come visit us in Endicott, the birthplace of IBM. I would love to bring you over to Binghamton University, meet with our researchers, sit down with us, and have a longer conversation about how you and I can work together to bring good manufacturing jobs back to upstate New York. Because I also think, like, folks around the country need to see Democrats and Republicans working together and finding common ground. So there's that. And if we can find common ground on something as important as building the middle class and bringing some good jobs back home, would you accept my invitation to come see us?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. I'll be delighted to find some time to do that together. And I just want to evoke on how much I appreciate the spirit of working collaboratively on these areas. I mean, this committee has a long tradition in science and technology matters of working in a bipartisan fashion. You know, what we're trying to do here is something special. It's not every day or every year or every decade that we get to launch a national effort that can have such a profound transformation. And so very appreciative of that spirit, and I'll be delighted to figure out a way how to work together and visit.
Terrific. When you come, we'll show you all the other history, and we'll get you over to Binghamton University for the labs. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you.
And I love the prop.
Thank you. My staff had some real questions about it, but I'm glad you approved.
The gentleman yields back, and now we go to my neighbor to the west, the great state of Illinois, Dr. Bill Foster.
Well, thank you. And I guess this is the point where I normally encourage you to come visit one of the two labs in my district, but it's too late. We had a very good meeting a couple of days ago here. Just a quick follow-up on this question of the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations. I was looking at the org chart. It is not there. It used to be there on the org chart that we apparently is on. So if you could just come up with the actual head count in the past and now, what the plan is, and not just for that piece of the org chart, but for just all of the boxes on the org chart, what the manpower projections are going to be, which I presume you must be doing for preparing budgets. So if you could just do that for the record, come back and give us the head count that you plan for each of these things, so we can find out that whether or not we're in a situation like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, where it was famously said, well, we're not going to eliminate it, we're going to turn it into five desks and a telephone. Okay, we want to make sure that its capacity is there, and not just that there's a place on the org chart. Let's see, there are a million things I could ask you. First off, you know, you're in some sense the last best hope for science. When you look at all of the 17 lab directors, if they look uphill on the org chart and say at what point is there no longer anyone with any advanced degree in science, you're it. Everyone above you on the org chart, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, has no advanced degree. It's the first time the Office of Science and Technology Policy has not been run by someone with a science degree. And, you know, what we see instead are, you know, I gotta say, you know, currency speculators, real estate dealers, you know, crypto people, venture capitalists who think that it's software investments as opposed to actual manufacturing. So I think, you know, so you got a tough job. But it's really important because you're like, you know, you're the tip of the spear to try to protect science. So I respect what you're trying to do. And there are a couple of things that, let's say another question, a lot of what we're trying to do is manufacturing. Is there anyone above you on the org chart that has ever manufactured anything? when you just think uphill? Because that's one of the things that I really, we have manufacturing deals being built by people who've never manufactured anything but
Well,
talking
I mean,
points.
Secretary Wright is a brilliant entrepreneur and built lots of things that involve very
Well,
complex
not a
manufacturing.
manufacturer.
Yeah,
I mean,
just
he
saying,
just,
complex engineering systems, for sure.
Okay, well, all right. But the people that appear to be striking all the deals are people doing chip deals that have never built a chip in their life, or, you just go down the list. It's tough not only on the scientific but also the economic front when you claim you're trying to rescue manufacturing. Now, you're going to have to, for the Genesis project, you're going to have to make a bunch of decisions fast about a bunch of hardware and software to buy. And so I was wondering, there are two parts to a modern supercomputer. There's the little compute engines, and then there is the massive fiber optics, the communications, and they're sort of co-equal parts of the effort. And it appears to be a matter of national priority with this administration to promote vendor lock. That they're going around saying, we want to make everyone addicted to one specific manufacturer's products, okay? And that's really, there's a tension there between, is the next generation of supercomputers that our country builds, are they going to use the vendor-specific InfiniBand or the open, multi-manufacturer open standards of, advanced Ethernets of various kind? You're going to have to make that decision soon. And how are you going to deal with that?
The department has a wonderful tradition of actually enabling an ecosystem to grow, and we are going to be consistent with that. So there will be heterogeneity for sure. I guarantee you that. It's already the case, and we will continue to bring novel forms of accelerators, novel form of networking technologies and protocols. There's a strong commitment also for open architectures and open source.
And so one of the problems there is if you look at the open network standards for data centers, there are Huawei and you name it, Tencent, the whole crowd is in there.
Sure.
So is there going to be any effort to separate it, or are we going to be in the same
Well,
situation?
we're most certainly not going to build it with Chinese technology.
But if you build it with the standards that they are also building to, it's a huge step upward for them. And so I was just wondering how you're talking about
No,
handling
so
that.
look, it's incredibly important that America leads also on standard setting. By the way, in computing, even though there are standards that we get to set through IEEE and other mechanisms, adoption is the ultimate standard.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it, right? So when
But if
people
we end up
lead,
going to open standards and it gets commoditized, then we're not necessarily going to win the technology war. Well, anyway.
yeah, but I just want to assure you that we are not going to implement a system with like one vendor or something. Like that is just not our strategy, right? We are going to, we are respectful of capabilities that we need to bring to the table, but part of our mission is also to enable the broadening of opportunity of technology options, and we are going to invest also in those options as well, a different scale of companies and different approaches.
That's good to hear. The details will be important.
Sure.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back, and next we go back to California for Representative Issa.
Mr. Gill, it's sort of interesting that Congressman Foster very kindly talked about manufacturers. And I don't know that I'm the only one in the room, but I think most people haven't tended a molding machine or done coil winding or personally cut wire or designed early ASICs. But since I did, I'd like to feel qualified enough to ask you a few questions about some implementation. And I'm going to start with one. Just before, quite frankly, before the 2020 election, we delivered to both President Trump and to his opponent a bipartisan grid resilience study, a blue ribbon study that General Wesley Clark co-chaired with myself. I was a former member at the time. And it called for, among other things, military bases to be self-sufficient and net exporters, for co-location of major essential items around those bases, and particularly, not saying data centers as such, but we called them data hubs at the time, and we were thinking a little bit less about what is evolving. We called for modular nuclear reactors because we believed that the only way you could get it done in 3, 4, or 5 years was to place it on military bases and waive the long and arduous process that typically goes on in the private sector off base. Having said that, it didn't happen. It didn't happen during those 4 years. We're now 1 year into this administration. And although there are inklings that you're going down that road, Congress hasn't been given a decisive, we are doing it, here's our timetable, and here's authorities, if necessary, to speed it up. With the recognition that, and I just left the CEO of a company that you know that makes the Snapdragon, which is one of the low-power chips that's entering the world of data centers. But at the end of the day, the forecast for the need for data is for energy is far greater than the capacity we have demonstrated here in the United States to be able to produce in 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. So, in a nutshell, when will we see the beginning of the initiative that says we will keep up with sustainable base energy sufficient to meet the projected need for data centers?
Yeah, well, thank you. And clearly, in terms of the dimension of co-location, when you have a very large load or mission critical and the need to collocate energy and the production of it, clearly ahead of the time, right? But like the good news is that we're in a situation.
We're now behind the times. I was bragging about being ahead of the times, but that was a long time ago now.
Yeah, I'm just validating your foresight on that. But yeah, you know, look, when you look at data center development, one of the things that from a policy matter is the insistence of bringing generation capacity, which could be co-located or, you know, if you're working with a utility in a more distributed fashion, but insisting that the load and the generation have to, like, you know, keep pace. And you know, so that's a huge priority. And this aspect of co-location and what is behind the meter and what you know, infrastructure of things that already exist in that are co-located that could be made dispatchable and could be made to actually improve the grid or, you know, and lower costs for consumers. I think that that's a very important question. There's ways to do this well. You know, if I look at, for example, in Virginia and Texas, they have about 30% of the total data center capacity of the nation. And they've more than doubled the amount of data centers. So I think if you look from 2019
Sure,
to
we could use
2024,
Sparks, Nevada, too, where thousands of acres are currently being built or in use.
Yeah, so
because energy is available.
That's right. So there's been examples where we have seen data center growth as an example and lowering cost around that. So again, it's not an easy answer, but it is possible to get it right. But I agree with you that we have our work cut out as a country to build the amount of generation that we're going to need, commensurate with the desire to reindustrialize and build AI capacity.
Let me close with a question for the record. Could you come back to us with your expectation of if we were to use every major military installation, naval, Army, and so on, and place significant modular nuclear reactors in all of the appropriate places with sufficient land and so on, how much capacity would the United States government create that would alleviate the off-base need for energy growth? What would be the base load that could be produced either to 100% meet the DOD requirements or more than 100% of DOD based on whatever studies you have internally? Could you get that back to the committee?
Yeah, I'll relay your question, but just to clarify, you're asking in both the use of federal land to be able to site new capacity and to use the demand capacity of whatever that is being sited as a means to offset consumption that would have happened from the existing
Right.
grid?
And Mr. Chairman, just to give you an example, Camp Pendleton had 2 1,000 megawatt nuclear facilities. They are shut down. The land is there, the facility is there, the transmission stations are there, and zero power is coming out of my military base at Camp Pendleton.
I hate to interrupt this discussion with the time. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Let's see. Next, we go to Representative McLean Delaney.
Thank
Thank you, Chair and Ranking Member, and thanks to Dr. Gill. I think I'm the last one, and I'm bringing it home, so thank you for being so patient the whole way. I'm going to echo many of my Democratic colleagues, concerns and also unbelievable, thoughts about energy and how we go forward. So I'm going to go down another line of thought, but also have to give it up for Congressman Riley and our American ingenuity. Congressman Foster really set me up for what I want to talk about. So my district includes a lot of biotech innovation along the corridor of I-270 in Maryland with federal installations like Fort Detrick and NIST, and we're home to a big tech and bioscience industry, which includes federal contractors working with companies, and they've made lots of investments. As I said, at NIST, we've done a lot with AI computing and energy efficiency, which has really furthered our U.S. competitiveness and our national security. And I agree with much of what you said in terms of our investments into where we need to go with public-private partnerships. I'm just going to say before I go into my line of questioning, I just want to make sure that we have a wide stakeholder of these public-private partnerships and that there's not just a few global companies, and that we really look at how we power AI and quantum, and that we're going to need to have many different stakeholders involved in that process. So in June, we had a hearing on the National Security Commission on Emerging Biotech, charting the future of biotechnology, and the commission made a lot of recommendations. And one of the key recommendations is to work with international partners to develop best practices and standards for biosafety and biosecurity, but more large, generally, all types of standards. And before I came to Congress, I was Deputy Assistant Secretary at NTIA, and I was one of the handful of representatives that dealt with the ITU and other international organizations. Unfortunately, our views were often drowned out by China in these forums, even when we worked on things like Open RAN and open interoperability. With cuts to science and grants and staffing in federal agencies, and also, in our international forums, America will make fewer discoveries that really contribute to science and maybe even pull back from some of our partnerships. I was disappointed to see that the Genesis mission only mentions international collaboration once when it directs the National Science and Tech Council to identify opportunities for scientific collaboration. I think it's critical for our discoveries to have international bodies and standards being shaped by some of our own U.S. companies, and that we are collaborating. If the Genesis mission is going to act as a premier research and innovation arm for AI, how do you see the U.S. plan to work with other departments and agencies to leverage the expertise you're gathering to increase U.S. presence in international standard setting?
Thank you for the question. So we're doing in sort of like layers of progress. The first was to unite the department on a shared mission, on the Genesis missions, which we did thanks to Secretary Wright. The next was also to unite the entire government, thanks to President Trump and the EO and the leadership of Michael Kratsios in OSTP, to precisely on this point. How will we work across the different federal agencies that support science?
Give more resources to more staffing to be able to do that as well.
So I think we've made good progress on that. There's a lot of commitment and working together, but let me also address the international piece as well, that I think first, which we're working hard to unite the country on this effort. And then, it's no easy task, but we're making progress, and I'm appreciative of of holding a hearing today on this topic and all of us working together on this effort. And we absolutely expect and need and should also partner internationally with allies to contribute to the success and to benefit from their expertise and investments into the Genesis mission. So, but we're just doing it in an order where it's like unite DOE, unite the government. Today, how do we all work together? And then also then, how do we work with select trusted international partners?
Yeah, I guess building on that and kind of what Representative Foster is talking about, I'm working on legislation to address the issue based on the Commission's recommendations to help NIST develop biological equivalents of gallons and meters and kilograms and really trustworthy standards. How would centralized strategic leadership in research and development, help the Genesis mission leverage these resources across our agencies? I mean, it seems like you're doing it, but had
Yeah, well, we're doing, but
specific
I'm
recommendations on
acknowledging that we're
resources.
getting started, so ideas are welcome on how to do that better. We started by having a unified approach with a unified team, with a unified leadership, and now it is for all willing partners, which we just started this process with OSTP. Let's take NIST as an example. They want to participate. Okay, how do we collaborate? Do you want to contribute on the platform piece? Do you want to contribute
equipment.
on the data and equipment? Do you want to contribute on the problem set that you want to do? So take NOAA as an example. Hey, how can we use this capability to improve weather forecasting and weather modeling? Let's collaborate on that. So I think we're going to do it. The spirit is to have an architecture and an infrastructure that allows a wide variety of science and engineering efforts to benefit from what we're building.
I think that's excellent. I would just say it would be great to have some transparency in that and some input from some of our different offices and stakeholders, because I think it's so important for our U.S. competitiveness and for our national security. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
Young lady yields back, and now we go to Mr. Subramaniam. Say that ag- Here, say that again. Anyway.
It's Subramaniam, like money? Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Dr. Gill, for being here today. The question was asked earlier, but I didn't quite get the answer. Your boss, President Trump, has called climate change a hoax and a con job. Do you agree with that, yes or no?
I have shared that, on the question of climate change, you ask
If it's a hoax
real phenomena
or a con job, yeah.
I have already answered the question before. Yeah.
What was it? I don't remember. Was it a yes or no?
That climate change is a real phenomena. Yes.
It's real, so you disagree with that. Okay.
No, I didn't say it. I said what I said. Like for me,
It's a real phenomenon. Okay, it's not a hoax. So, because I'm concerned that this administration's cutting research into clean energy, rolling back protections on pollution, and gutting a lot of science that we can leverage to address this issue if you believe it's a real problem. But I'll move on. The administration also has driven out and either fired or driven out or riffed about 3,500 DOE employees, and 39% of them are in the science and innovation workforce. Did you agree with these cuts or firings?
I joined the department slightly less than 2 months ago. What I am focused is on bringing the best of our scientists and engineers, 40,000 of them in the national laboratories. And I'm building with the Genesis mission, which we're all united in building. So we're excited about that.
Did you agree with these particular cuts?
I am focused on building the Genesis mission and
So,
delivering that
'cause
capability.
Elon Musk said that Doge was somewhat successful, but he wouldn't do it again. Would you have done Doge again?
I wasn't running Doge. I don't know.
Okay.
Asking the wrong person.
Sounds good. All right. Well, let's get to energy then. So we've been talking about AI a lot, but AI needs data storage, which requires energy, right? And we need a lot of data centers, basically, is one way to usher in more AI. And your other boss, Secretary Wright, said yesterday that if people want to lower their electricity prices and their utility bills, we should build more data centers. Do you agree with that?
Look, I think on this topic, like if we want to be sort of a little bit serious and detailed about it.
Oh, I want to be very serious
If you
about it.
look between 2019 and 2024, and you look at where data centers are located and data center growth and energy prices, if you plot it in a in an axis, it's slightly negatively correlated. Meaning, if you look at places where like Virginia or Texas, where they increased 200% the amount of data centers, they account together as those two states to 30% of data center capacity in the nation, and electricity prices on those two states went down during that period of time. All I am
So you're
saying
saying
it's not easy. Having
No,
more load
I'm going to
doesn't
reclaim
mean
my
higher
time.
prices.
You're saying that data centers have lowered energy prices in Virginia.
No,
Because
I-
I represent Virginia. I have 300 data centers in my district. Are you telling me that my constituents' utility costs have gone down because of them?
I'm not saying data centers lower energy prices.
Okay,
No,
thank
I'm
you.
not
Thank
saying
you for
that, but
answering.
no,
the
but
question.
let's
That's what I was
We're
asking,
implying a
because your
causal
boss said
relationship.
that they're going to lower
No,
energy
but
prices.
like, let me-
if you
don't put
build
words in my
in the
mouth, right?
transmission costs
You're
of
putting
building
words in my
transmission
mouth. I don't
lines
agree
and
with that.
how much it raises the base load, you know that it's actually going to double energy costs over the next 10 years.
More load
maybe less
does
than that.
not mean it's not true that as a universal statement you're making that more load leads to more higher energy prices. It depends.
That's
on
not what I said, though. But your boss said that we need to build more data centers to lower utility costs. That's what your boss said. And well, you're saying you maybe disagree with that. Then.
If you're bringing investment where you're building data centers, and along with that investment adds generation capacity, by having a higher level of investment into the system, you can lower costs.
Yeah, but who's paying for those costs? The reality is what's happening in Virginia is that utility ratepayers are paying those costs for that energy infrastructure, and that's increasing their utility bills. That's what's happening in Virginia. I would love for you to come out to my district, actually. It's only about 30 or 40 minutes away, and talk to people, and they'll show you their energy bills. I'll show you my energy bill. It has gone up, and it has gone up because of data centers. And we're doubling the number of data centers in my district over the next 5 to 10 years, and that's going to double, maybe triple our energy costs. But anyway, you know, this administration said that it was going to cut utility prices in half this year. It's December 10th right now. Most people's utility costs have gone up. Do you think we can do that in the next 20 days?
I think a lot of decisions that were made in years past have contributed.
But then why would you
direct
say you're going to
result of
cut
the current
people's
state.
utility costs in half if it's not possible? Why would this administration
This
say that?
administration is doing a
Were you
heroic
lying?
job in driving energy innovation and driving costs down. That's the focus of this.
But has it?
administration.
Has it cut utility bills in half?
So,
Okay, well, let's take a step back. Can you tell me about how many data centers we currently have in the country right now?
I don't know the exact number. Maybe you can tell me.
Okay, it's around 5,000. Do you know about how much energy we need to power those data centers, like ballpark?
I know it's probably like 5% of like total capacity of electricity system. I don't know what it's probably maybe
No.
like 30, 40 gigawatts or something like that. What is the number? I don't know.
Well, do you know about how many data centers you think we'll need to build in the next 5 to 10 years
I
to
think
power
that
an
wa-
AI?
I mean, look,
infrastructure?
that ranges a great deal. There's like $2 trillion of announced projects with 200 gigawatts. I don't know that all of those are real.
It sounds like we should have a conversation about how we're going to do data center infrastructure in this country. It sounds like that conversation is not happening to where it needs to be. So I invite
I'm
you and
sorry
everyone
to
else at
interrupt
DOE to
this,
come to my
but
district.
the gentleman's
and
time
hear
has
from people.
expired.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. So in closing, you know, I want to thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony. I really do appreciate that. And for the members for their questions. And the record will remain open for 10 days for additional comments and written questions from members. And this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you, Dr. Baird.
You bet.
Thank you very much, sir. That was great. A little excitement.
Absolutely. Yeah. I told her, I talked to the Congressional Affairs, I'm like,